as that goes, though. Charlie Babrinskoy from Ariel Investments is still with us. Eugene Profit from Profit Investments joins the conversation. First to you, Mike. Fourth week in a row of gains for both the S&P and the Dow to new record heights. It's a powerful rally.
Yes, I mean, the tail of the tape is really becoming more and more impressive. This upward grind, it's been pretty tireless and relentless. If you're an index owner of the S&P or trader of it, the best move has been to do nothing. I was just noticing S&P closed at 41.85. The intraday low, March 23rd of last year, was 21.91. So you have 2,000 points in the S&P 500 in 55 weeks. It's a little over 90%. So you can certainly be tempted to say, when are we going to reach that moment where it seems like enough already, or where we exhaust a lot of the positive trends that have been driving things? And, you know, markets kind of foiled that kind of thinking for a while right now, simply because the macro's too good. The Fed is kind of ultra easy relative to the economic news flow, and you do really have a chase going on. And so I think we have to be wary of sentiment. We have to be wary of kind of the thin air that the indexes are getting up into with this somewhat of a melt-up-like action. But really, it's very orderly in a way. It's very natural. There's also lots of stocks going down, so it's not as if it's indiscriminate at this point. So you have to sort of respect the trend while basically saying it wouldn't take much of anything to have it back off a little bit.
Eugene, when you look at all the kind of data and the earnings that are coming out, does it make you think, I want to ride this rally and I'd rather not bet against it?
Yes, I do. And I think that what Mike said about doing nothing was pretty interesting and absolutely correct. But when your clients and you see Zoom doing what it did last year, you see GameStop, you see Discovery, and you see all the stocks rotating back and forth, it's very hard to really imagine that essentially the pandemic rebound has shown a capacity to basically stay fully invested and rebalance your portfolios was probably the best strategy overall, and not get caught up so much in fear of missing out.
Charlie, is it harder to find names in your beloved value area of the market, considering that has been a leadership spot today and over the last few months? The Russell 2000, industrials, materials, groups like that on top.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a lot harder today than it was a year ago. A year ago, it was shooting fish in a barrel. But, you know, we still have some very high quality financials trading at very reasonable prices. Goldman Sachs is trading at 10 times 22 earnings. That's 1.4 times tangible book. On a historic basis, that's below average. And Goldman is just getting better and better every year. It's like a good wine. So there are names that make a lot of sense. You know, obviously, I talked about how Madison Square Garden is still very, very cheap. There are names, in particular, if you believe me about inflation, there are names that are going to do very well in an inflationary environment. And I would just say, I love buy and hold, but you got to be careful when the S&P is dominated by FANG stocks. Just holding that index can be scary. You saw what happened in 2001. At these levels, I would not hold the S&P 500.
Let's turn now to the Fed. CBC's Steve Leisman caught up earlier with the Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller. It was an exclusive interview, and Steve joins us now with some key takeaways. Steve.
Wolf, good afternoon. In his first press interview as a new Fed Governor, Chris Waller, who took a seat at the table in January, said the economy is ready to rip, and he's not going to do a thing about it.
I think the economy is ready to rip. We're looking at growth forecast of nearly 8% for Q2. My forecast is about 6.5% for the year. I see unemployment falling to the low fives by the end of the year, and inflation running about 2.5% for the year. So I think the economy is really ready to go.
You'd think a ripping economy would prompt a Fed official to talk of easing back what is the easiest Fed policy in history, but Waller rejected that. He said while growth rates may be high, the level of growth remains below where it should be. He cited the 8 million jobs shortfall from before the pandemic. Quote, we got a long way to go, he said. There's no reason you pull the plug on our support until we're really through this. And Wilf, you know how he said 8%? I'm working on a rapid update for Monday. We have about 11 of the forecasts in. Our number is higher than that for this quarter.
Well, I was going to say, Steve, I mean, I get the arguments about potential slack in the labor market and what that might imply for wage growth. But other areas, you look at retail sales, Moynihan, similar tone to that from Waller about seeing it rip higher, amazing retail sales for this month, but getting better, not just maintaining that. I mean, Why are people not a little bit more concerned about inflation?
You know, it's the mantra that you heard, that Sarah's heard and elicited from Powell, I guess, a week or so ago. The idea was maybe this week. The idea that it's temporary. The idea that you're going to have demand will cool off. In fact, Waller said, "Hey, after this check, there's probably not going to be another check. After these unemployment benefits run out, there won't be additional unemployment benefits. That the spending is not going to be consistent. It'll tail off, and then you'll have some decline." But in fact, Wilf, I don't want to ruin the story for Monday because we're not quite done yet. A lot of economists see this above potential growth continuing for the next several quarters.
Well, that could be one of the keys. Steve, I liked the interview. I thought it was interesting that he just flat out rejected the dots and said they're not working. We don't need them. They're confusing, which has sort of been. I know, it's funny because they put them out there, and I'm wondering if they go away, if that becomes, because Powell also dismisses the dots in the news conferences with you guys, with all the reporters. So if they go away, what does that do you think, to interest rate expectations in the market?
You know, Sarah, I'm a big fan of the dots. I always have been, and I think people get all hung up in this, and maybe they're not right, maybe they're wrong. The issue is that the market takes it as a promise and not a forecast. And the Fed officials feel there's not enough information around it, or that the market's incorporating around it. I think if they go away, I think it's a loss. I think you take that as it is. It's a forecast of where you think you'll be if your economic numbers come out the way you expect them to be. But I think we'll be a little more lost and have a little less transparency if the dots go away.
Steve, thanks so much for that. Charlie, I was wondering, I mean, I get the positive view on Goldman Sachs, very understandable after their quarter. Do you also get drawn with this environment towards some of the retail banks as well, or not?
You know, in my opinion, it's just too much of wisdom that these banks are going to do so much better when rates go higher. It's much more complicated than that. Banks did not generally do well in the 70s when we had a lot of inflation. So because I'm just a believer that we're going to have more inflation, I don't think these regional banks, which frankly don't have a lot of barriers to entry in their businesses, they're very competitive businesses, are that attractive. The one exception, we love Northern Trust, which is a real advisor to the wealthy around the world. We love Bank of Oklahoma, which has a real niche. But other than those two, we don't love regional banks.
Eugene, what about you? Are you buying the inflation story or the transitory story, and how does it impact what investments you make?
Yeah, I'm more in the transitory camp, and I think that the concern I have is if we've had a very strong vaccine rollout here in the U.S. and the economy is opening and things are starting to go well, but you've also had the last 2 weeks an 11% increase in virus cases, and the vaccine rollout's not going so well around the world. And an interconnected global economy, I think there's a possibility that you might get some hiccups along the way. So I absolutely think we're going to have the economy ripping, as he said, here in the short term. But going out further in the year, I think that it's going to be very important to see what happens with travel over the summer. You have planes filling up. You have hotels beginning to fill and amusement parks opening, but the cruise lines are still in dry dock. And then some of the other countries are still closed. So I've never thought it would be straight up. It's certainly very encouraging right now, but I do think it's going to level out some here, and I'm not as concerned that inflation is going to be runaway as some of the other commentators.
Charlie and Eugene, thank you both.
Wilfred.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say ripping is the new Fed speak. Ripping is entering the jargon, ripping and transitory.
But you can't really have both. Maybe you can. We'll see. No. Temporarily you can. So, yeah. Anyway. Charlie, Eugene, thank you both so much for joining us. Have lovely weekends. Still to come with the 10-year yield still below 1.6%. Our next guest will tell us where she sees the biggest opportunities to invest in a low-rate environment. Plus, we are awaiting President Biden's news conference with the Prime Minister of Japan, where we'll bring you that as soon as it begins. We're back in 90.
You know that tech stock we talked about? I picked up 500 shares.
You get in at a good price?
Oh, yeah.
Schwab saved you how much?
With Schwab Order Execution Advantage, you get price improvement on 92% of orders and commission-free online trades.
I'll take care of this.
Are you getting complete price transparency? Expect more from your firm. Schwab, the better place for traders.
With a bang, energy and change came to every part of our universe. Seismic or small, it continues.
Change is all around us. Shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
Treasury yields bouncing back a bit today, but still below their recent highs and still sitting near historic lows. So where can investors find opportunity? And what's going on with bonds? Let's bring in Karen Carnio-Tambor, Co-Chief Investment Officer of Sustainability at Bridgewater. It's great to see you again, Karen. There is this question about whether we've seen the bottom in rates and they are headed on a one-way ticket higher, which has caused a lot of angst for technology stocks lately. What's your view at Bridgewater as far as where bonds go?
Well, I'd say probably the most important thing for investors to think about is not the bond yield itself, but what the environment that the bond yield is showing is like. When you see periods when rates were rising, bond yields were rising, and that really was rates were rising led by the long end, and you get a steepening of the yield curve, that's really a sign that the economy is doing great and the bond market is getting ahead and the Fed is really behind what the economy is doing. That typically has been a great time to be earning risk premiums relative to when the bond yield is rising, reflecting that the Federal Reserve is trying to cut off the expansion, thinks there's too much froth in the market, too much inflation, trying to cut it off. Very clearly right now, bond yields are ahead of the move. And when that happens, it's a great time to earn risk premiums. You get this kind of fat yield curve and you get this incentive to keep moving into risky assets and looking at where there's risk premium left. And any rise in bond yields can kind of shake out some of the riskiest stuff in the market and kind of shake out the biggest froth, but can kind of give more fuel to let's give a little more time for the cycle to run. It's really a reflection things are good rather than a reflection that the Fed is trying to cut things off.
So it explains a lot of the recent action we've seen in the markets, the fact that value has outperformed. A lot of these cyclical groups like banks have really started perking up. Where does that leave us now, Karen? Where do you see the most opportunities given the backdrop you just laid out?
Well, I think it leaves investors in a spot where there's a desire to find where is there still risk premium to earn, and places where they're already looking pretty bubbly, there's already a big runoff, and there isn't a lot of risk premium to earn, are slowly being shaken out as the rates come up a little. And increasingly, it makes sense for investors to look out at places like, for example, emerging markets, diversification, or more value stocks, places where they still believe there's risk premium to be had.
Karen, to what extent do you think that U.S. Treasuries are being driven by the rate environment around the rest of the world? And is that only going to be a temporary factor, and thus could we be taken a little bit by surprise later in the year?
Well, the sign of the paradigm we're in really is that central banks all around the world have a lot of incentives lined up to lag the economy, to lag the recovery. So central banks sort of fall into two categories. Either they really haven't gotten a great recovery yet, for whatever reason, the vaccines are not coming through yet, or they haven't done a great job managing it, or they're like the US and the economy is pretty clearly coming back, roaring back. But even in the cases where the economy is roaring back, all the incentives are lined up after a decade plus of very low inflation to basically say, let's let this go, let's lag the economy. And that's going to keep being probably the most important driver of markets, the fact that central banks are so wanting to lag the economy. And in some sense, the stars are aligned in that the Fed is, in one hand, facing the conditions that most classically would say maybe it's time to tighten, the economy is strengthening so quickly, but on the other hand, has been most vocal in saying we feel that our mandate this time around is going to be to let inflation rip until we know it's a problem, and to try to really get an inclusive recovery that deals with whatever shortfalls are available, whatever places are doing worse. And so when you look at the United States below the average and you take out kind of the most booming cities or the strongest job markets, you actually get a lot of places where there's still shortfalls. So all of the incentives are lined up for the United States, where the policies are strongest, fiscal policy is very stimulative, to still lag the economy, and then other countries aren't even in a place where they'd want to. So that's a lot of central banks that want to stay behind the curve.
We're looking at your chart here that you made of this, where you just stripped out the coast, basically, in all these cities, and showed what? I guess that the Fed, if the Fed was just making policy for the coast, it would have to tighten earlier. Is that the takeaway?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about divergences in the economy, you hear a lot of conversation about racial divergences, divergences in terms of education levels. And one of the most obvious glaring ones is just take out New York, Boston, LA, San Francisco, the most booming cities. You could take out a different set. We've done the top quartile. Whatever you do, you take out the most booming cities, and you basically see that pre-COVID, the employment market was extremely strong at historic highs in these places, and inflation was already running decently above the Fed target, even just in those cities. And then the rest of the economy, which makes up, 80, 90% of the economy, even before COVID, conditions weren't as good. Inflation has been underperforming for many years. And so as things start coming back, they still look very, very slow in those areas. That's the bulk of the country. And as the Fed says, we're going to let this happen because of what's happened over the last 10 years. We're going to let inflation get stronger. And we're looking for where are there shortfalls. You don't have to look very carefully for shortfalls. You take out a couple of the strongest markets and you see the shortfalls in the employment market are everywhere, pervasive. And it's just one more thing that adds to this broad environment where the Fed has a lot of incentives to lag the economy and be behind the curve.
Has the case for gold been hit severely by crypto's rise?
Well, investors are going to look for real storeholds of wealth, and there aren't that many options. So the idea that gold wouldn't be one of the key storeholds of wealth that one would use to protect yourself against an inflationary environment doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Investors are going to keep using gold as one of the important tools in their toolkit to say, this is one of the things I really need to hold if I'm concerned about rising inflation, which investors certainly should be in an environment where central banks are incentivized to lag the economy and where fiscal policy becomes the key policy driver. And that is, as we've seen, policies that can go very directly to just give people checks to spend in the real economy, generating that sort of inflationary environment.
Karen, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Let's get over to Mike now for a look at the value versus growth trade. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, well, there's been a little bit of a pause in that comeback of value and cyclical stocks against growth, but I think there's still probably a plurality, if not a majority, of strategists and investors who think that value still has upsides. Charts like this that makes them actually believe that. So this is the value relative to growth, Russell 3000 in both cases, from 1995 to 2003, with the current period since 2016 overlaid. So this right here, this late 90s into 2000, that was the internet bubble. That was when growth was the only game in town and value lagged badly, in fact, to a historic degree. And it very much tracked what we saw in recent years as we had FANG and we had this disinflationary environment, and tech was the whole story. So you see this comeback that's happened right here, and it really encourages this idea that, wow, what's to stop value over multiple years from coming back? So I think that on a relative basis, it's pretty resonant. But take a look at the actual price levels, so to speak, of the value and growth indexes over that same period of time. So this was your value relative comeback. It was growth getting destroyed. In an absolute basis, Russell 3000 growth went down almost 60%. So yes, value held itself held its value much better than those things in the bear market back then. But the outperformance didn't come because it went up a little more than growth stocks. I just think it's a little bit of a kind of sober up type of a number to say that you have to, it's a lot to expect both types of stocks to go up and the S&P to go up when value is supposedly going to make up all this ground. Might be tough to happen that way.
And Mike, that argument is also backed up if you look at valuation multiples of growth back then to today.
Without a doubt. I mean, growth was far more overvalued back then, but also value was cheaper on an absolute basis back then too. So the divergence was very high, and also in absolute levels, I think value was somewhat cheaper. I mean, you could quibble with the macro dynamics and where rates were and all the rest of it. And it's not to say that value can't continue to outperform, but that dramatic type of a comeback that we saw back then in the early 2000s, you know, was unique circumstances, or at least circumstances people are not really expecting right now in terms of, you know, huge declines in absolute terms and growth index.
Got it. Mike, thank you. Mike Santoli. Up next, former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb is here on a Friday on whether we can ever achieve herd immunity and a return to normalcy with so many Americans expressing COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy. Plus, we'll bring you President Biden's news conference with Japan's Prime Minister as soon as that begins in Washington. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a different type of financial partner, discover Baird. Our recognition as a great place to work means we attract top talent to give you the financial advice you need now and for the next 100 years. Discover the Baird difference. Visit BairdDifference.com.
When the market is unpredictable, BAM gives you certainty. In the face of market volatility and illiquidity, BAM-insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable rating. BAM. Build America Mutual.
A global battery arms race is underway. Critical materials like lithium are essential to our energy future. With demand projected to grow as much as 400%, a U.S.-based raw material supply chain is now a national priority. Standard Lithium is ready to lead. With our advanced direct lithium extraction technology, fast, sustainable, modern lithium production is here. Standard Lithium, America's 21st century lithium company.
This is delicious.
Wow, Jimmy.
Thank you very much.
Bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it.
What's in mine?
Oh,
Yes, sir.
Done. So good.
This is sick.
Today is a good day.
It is a good day. Yes, sir.
Shark Tank, Sunday starting at 3 Eastern. CNBC. Get yours.
Got a to-do list that just goes on and on and on? Download Thumbtack. It's the app that finds you local pros for any home project, like people to fix the plumbing, or freshen up old paint, or help you deal with all those boxes. Thumbtack instantly finds local pros for you. It shows you prices and reviews so you can hire exactly who you need. Download the app and start your next project today. Thumbtack.
Tonight, 8 dead in a mass shooting. What witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith. 7 Eastern, CNBC.
Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla saying a third booster shot will likely be needed within a year of getting the COVID vaccine and that people may need annual shots. Scientists still don't know how long protection lasts against the virus after someone is fully vaccinated. Joining us now to discuss Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner. He sits on the boards of Pfizer and Illumina as a CNBC contributor. Dr. Gottlieb, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
I guess great progress on that front, but a step back with the J&J vaccine. I know you've been on a bit earlier on the week to discuss this, but sum it up for us. Has this been a gross overreaction, or do you support the actions that have been taken?
Well, look, I think it was prudent for the FDA to take a close look at this, and a lot of the J&J vaccine was used in the last 3 weeks. So 50% of the doses that were delivered were in the last 3 weeks. So if there are these rare side effects associated with the vaccine, they're going to identify it this week, and probably next week you're going to be able to find these cases. So I think it's prudent for the FDA to try to fully characterize this. I do believe this is an important product. I believe even if this is a rare side effect associated with the vaccine, it's going to come back to the market, perhaps with additional labeling language to advise physicians and patients on what to be alert for, maybe with some restrictions, maybe with an age-based restriction on the use of the vaccine for a short period of time until we better understand its full profile. But remember, this is a vaccine that's important that in ways that are differentiated from the other vaccines, in that it's delivered as a single dose, and it also has easier storage requirements. So I think as a global product to try to address the global pandemic, this is an important vaccine.
I was wondering what your hopes were of the U.S. reaching herd immunity by the end of the summer, and whether that gives you confidence that a second lockdown, or not second lockdown, we've had multiple lockdowns, another lockdown won't be required. It was interesting commentary coming out of the UK this week where vaccination rates are pretty high, and yet they're still talking about the possible risk and need for further lockdowns going forward.
Look, I don't think we're going to have to do anything near what we did this past year. I don't think we're going to have to close businesses in the way we did this past year, assuming nothing unexpected happens with the variants that we're seeing pop up around the world, and assuming that the vaccine is still going to be protective against those new strains as they emerge. But I do think life's going to be different. I think we're going to do things differently in the wintertime as coronavirus starts to circulate, probably later in the fall or more likely in the winter. It's going to be frowned upon coming to work sick. I think direct-to-consumer home testing is going to be more commonplace. People are going to test themselves more for coronavirus and the flu. So I think we're going to behave differently in trying to restrict the spread of this virus. But I think it's going to be against the backdrop of largely normal activity, just with more precautions around respiratory health in the wintertime. And we're going to pick up a lot of benefits from that in terms of reduced flu spread, because a lot of the mitigation steps that we've taken for coronavirus, trying to prevent spread of coronavirus, were very effective against flu. So I think there will be productivity gains from, an overlay of some more prudent activity about the spread of respiratory diseases in the wintertime.
One factor that could determine how much we return to normal, Dr. Gottlieb, is this issue of whether vaccinated people can transmit. So if we see a lot of people start going back to the office and going back to bars and restaurants after they've been vaccinated, do they present a risk to their kids at home that are not vaccinated?
They do, to some extent. What we've seen from the data so far is that people who are vaccinated are less likely to develop an infection. They're certainly less likely to develop symptomatic disease from the infection, and they're less likely to transmit the infection. We haven't fully characterized the magnitude of that, but we believe it's quite profound. But less likely doesn't mean completely unlikely. So there are going to be cases where people who are fully vaccinated either develop symptomatic COVID or more likely develop the infection and will have a window in which they're probably contagious. So I think even people who are fully vaccinated, I think in a high prevalence environment, if you're dealing in an environment where there's a lot of COVID around and you think you're likely to come into contact with that disease, and you're around people who are unprotected, either because they couldn't get vaccinated, didn't get vaccinated, and they're vulnerable, or they're young children, I still think you need to be prudent. So that's why I think you're seeing a lot of public health officials still urge some caution in high prevalent environments like Michigan, even for individuals who are fully vaccinated. But if we're in a low prevalence environment where you're less likely to come into contact with the infection and you're vaccinated, so you're less likely to become infected even if you come into contact with it, then the probability is much lower, and I think you can make, more judicious decisions to go out and about and, normally.
We still don't really fully have an answer, do we, Dr. Gottlieb, about whether you can transmit the virus once you've been fully vaccinated, whether you contract it or not, but just whether you can transmit it to kids. I know there's some preliminary data from Israel, but when are we going to have that answer? Because it feels like that would determine a lot of what we can and cannot do once we've been vaccinated, including potentially wearing masks.
Well, look, if you look at some of the real-world evidence, you've seen about a 90% reduction in the risk of becoming infected, even asymptomatic infection for people who are vaccinated. So we're starting to get some real-world data both out of the U.S. and out of Israel. So if you're not developing infection and you're not even developing asymptomatic infection, then you're not going to transmit the infection because you just don't have it. Then for the cohort that do develop asymptomatic infection, what the risk is of transmitting it, we don't fully understand yet. It's going to take time to ascertain that, but there is reason to believe that even people who develop asymptomatic infection, if they're vaccinated, they're less likely to transmit the infection because you're probably developing what we call a non-sterilizing mucosal immunity, which means that you have immune cells at the level of your respiratory mucosa that probably knock down the virus on that tissue. So your secretions, your respiratory secretions, if they do have virus particles in it, probably have less virus particles in it, so you're less likely to transmit the infection. Now, how that interplays with some of these more contagious variants, we don't fully understand. B117 is a more contagious variant, so it might offset some of those benefits, but there's still going to be a benefit in terms of reduced potential to transmit the infection through vaccination for most people.
Just want to go back, Dr. Gottlieb, to the J&J vaccine to round things off. Do you think it has been damaged in public opinion terms as much as, say, the AstraZeneca one clearly was across continental Europe, or how much longer until it does if we don't get it fully approved again in the short term?
Well, look, I hope not, because I think it's an important vaccine for both the U.S. and the global market. It's differentiated in ways that make it, in certain settings, easier to deliver. So it's one-and-done shots, so you don't have to bring people back. It doesn't need to be stored under the same cold temperatures. So even in the U.S. market, in certain settings, I think more austere setting, it's going to be an important vaccine. We do have the benefit in the U.S. right now where more than 125 million people have had at least one dose of a vaccine. We have increasing supply of the vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer, the company I'm on the board of. So I think that also factored into the FDA's decision about temporarily pausing use of the J&J vaccine. It's a different risk environment in that we have more people vaccinated right now, more vaccine supply coming into the market. But I think the J&J vaccine is still going to be an important product, both for the U.S. market, but especially the global market. This was the vaccine that we were going to put in a lot of low and middle income countries because of the, improved handling requirements around this vaccine.
Dr. Gottlieb, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Housing starts were much stronger than expected last month. Coming up, Nuveen Real Estate's Global Chief Investment Officer on whether she sees any signs of a slowdown in this very hot market. Plus, President Biden set to hold a news conference with the Prime Minister of Japan. That was due to start already, so we will bring it to you live as and when it begins.
We've all felt this gap, the distance between what is and what could be. While he's tapping into his passion, the U.S. Bank mobile app can help you tap your way to your savings goals without missing a beat, so you can feed his passion. Earplugs not included. U.S. Bank. We'll get there together.
Did you know that Petco is now a health and wellness company?
Their groomers work wonders for my confidence.
I trust their vets, and I'm known to have trust issues.
They deliver high-quality food the same day.
I was outside digging. What'd I miss?
Just everything regarding our physical, social, and mental health.
Exciting. I'm gonna take a spin around the room.
Great idea.
Petco, the health and wellness company.
If you want to get back to your favorite places and feel confident they have put your health and safety first,
look for the Well Health Safety Seal.
I'm Dr. Richard Carmona. This is the Well Health Safety Seal from the International Well Building Institute, the global authority on healthy buildings.
The Well Health Safety Rating was informed by years of research and input from hundreds of leading virologists, public health experts, epidemiologists, and building professionals around the world.
The Well Health Safety Seal means that we'll feel better going into restaurants,
theaters, stores, hotels,
stadiums, and all the places that we love.
Everything may look the same, but the Well Health Safety Seal means that your health and safety are top of mind when it comes to
cleaning and sanitizing procedures,
air and water quality management,
emergency preparedness programs,
and health services.
So look for the Well Health Safety Seal outside
and feel more confident going inside. Learn more at wellhealthsafety.com.
Time for a CBC News update with Courtney Reagan. Hey, Court.
Hi there, Will. Well, another deadly traffic stop. This one in San Antonio. Police say the driver of a truck pulled his gun and shot an officer in the hand after being pulled over. The officer returned fire, killing the driver and one passenger and injuring another person in that truck. Well, in the subway at New York's Times Square, police say they arrested a man with an unloaded semi-automatic rifle, ammunition, and gas mask. Officials say the man claimed to be from Ohio and said it was legal for him to have the weapon. In Cuba, Raul Castro says he is resigning as head of the country's Communist Party. Only Raul and his brother Fidel have led Cuba since the country's revolution in 1959. No word on who Castro will endorse as his successor. And former NBA champion Dwayne Wade is getting back in the game. He has bought a stake in the Utah Jazz and says he plans to take an active role in the team. It's not clear how big Wade's stake is, but the NBA does have a rule against ownership stakes of less than 1%. So we know it's at least that. I think it's probably a little higher. Sarah, back over to you.
All right, Courtney, thank you. Courtney Reagan. Lumber prices have skyrocketed nearly 300% over the past year. Up next, Nuveen Real Estate's Global Chief Investment Officer on whether higher commodity costs could soon start weighing on the housing industry. And we will bring you to President Biden's news conference with the Prime Minister of Japan as soon as it begins. First foreign leader to meet President Biden at the White House. As we had to break, here's a check on the big winners and losers in the Dow today, which closed at another record high above 34,000.
CNBC News Update is sponsored by Comcast Business. Bounce forward at ComcastBusiness.com.
These days, you have to keep everything moving and reinvent the wheel.
We got a huge increase in orders.
With a hybrid,
I think we can handle that.
you can do both.
I'll be right in.
That's why manufacturers are going hybrid with IBM. With Watson on a hybrid cloud, factories can use AI to automate the little things so they can focus on the next big thing. Businesses that want to innovate at scale are going with a smarter hybrid cloud using the technology and expertise
Nice work, guys.
of IBM.
Lately, it's been hard to think about the future. But thinking about the future is human nature. At Edward Jones, our 19,000 financial advisors listen and work with you to create personalized investment strategies to help you get back to drafting dreams and building your future. Edward Jones, it's time for investing to feel individual.
Schools are one of the most impacted industries from COVID-19, and students have suffered massive learning loss. With education technology growing to a $6.1 billion industry by 2025, there is no better time to build the future with Abi, an AI-enabled tutor that was named one of Time's best inventions in 2020.
Amazing.
Abi is highly adaptive and personalized, giving teachers and students around the world the tools they need to succeed. Be a part of our mission at joinabi.com.
The path forward, the changing workplace,
How many people are not going to feel as though they have to be back all the time?
the reopening economy.
We're at 6% unemployment already. That's amazing from where we were.
Stay connected, stay informed. CNBC.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful, so we set out to create a better home selling experience with a network of the most successful real estate agents in America that'll sell your home for as little as a 2% commission.
The icing on the cake with the Ideal Agent was that we saved $12,000 in commission.
They were so stress-free. The whole process was amazing, and I would definitely recommend them.
We are not a discount brokerage. These are top local agents that'll get you the best results.
U.S. home building surged to a nearly 15-year high, with housing starts jumping 19.4% in March. And this comes as lumber prices soar. They're up nearly 50% so far this year and nearly 300% over the last 12 months. Joining us to discuss the future of this red-hot real estate market, Carly Tripp, Nuveen Real Estate Global CIO and Head of Investments. Carly, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you both.
What is the key factor that you're looking out for that would worry you about a potential change in direction in this super hot housing market?
Yeah, so the housing market is super hot, but I think it's justified at this point. We're coming off of one of the most underbuilt markets over the last decade. And if you compare the housing start numbers this morning to where they've trended the last 3 cycles, we're still in a good place. And if you start to couple that with a potential temper in activity due to an increase in material costs, you still have supply-demand imbalance that's going to continue to drive pricing.
What about those material costs? I mean, it's pretty extraordinary, as we just mentioned, the lumber price increase. Are there other raw ingredients as well?
Oh, sure. So, you know, the material costs are staggering, but it's the result of the pandemic and a tight supply chain. I'm sure, as you read, as the LA port numbers got released this week, there were some container ships that sat for as long as it took them to get to the port of LA. So that's going to take a while to work itself through the system. But we have record low inventory as coupled with strong demand. And honestly, I think that's symbolic of this pent up consumer demand that we are expecting to see post-pandemic.
How are you thinking, Carly, about the future of cities in America and what that might mean for buying real estate there?
Sure. So we've seen a ton of population migration out of coastal markets into the Sunbelt cities. That is not a new phenomenon. That existed pre-COVID and has been transpiring for several years now. Austin, Charlotte, Raleigh, Nashville have all experienced 15 to 30% growth in population over the last decade. Not only that, it's primarily coming from young people with room to grow and expand. So I'm here in Charlotte, where I'm based, we've had 45% growth in population age 20 to 29 over the last decade, which is just phenomenal. So I don't think it means a complete out-migration of coastal markets. I just think the population is going to be more dispersed going forward. So it's imperative that real estate investors diversify their allocations geographically going forward.
Are you concerned about the outlook for retail space or office space?
I'm not. Office is going to take some time to return, but like everything else, it's cyclical. Retail, I actually am a little bit more bullish than some of my peers and some of my colleagues. I see those numbers as improving pretty strongly, and I think it may be an unsung beneficiary of the pandemic. So the retail sales that we saw this week, 10% growth, even if you compare February of 21 with February of 20, significant growth in sales across the board. If you couple that with a market that's been really undersupplied and underserved from an investment perspective for the last decade, it's really stacking up well, I think, for bricks and mortar investment. You know, everybody has talked about e-commerce over the last year, and it's true, e-commerce is here to stay and experience tremendous growth. But I think what's largely been ignored is that the real superstar was buy online, pick up in store. So same day store pickup really stood out as the winner, in my opinion, and retail investment is going to be the beneficiary of that.
It's really interesting. I know you don't talk public stocks, but that there are clearly implications investors can take when they're looking at REITs or others. Just to dig in a little bit more, so are you saying, Carly, you expect real estate in retail to actually grow? Because isn't the thinking that even if stores have proven their worth, click and collect, buy and pick up, go and have the experience, we're still overstored in this country?
We're still
Are you saying that's wrong?
No, I'm not saying that's wrong at all. So, you know, if you look at us against any other industrialized nation, we have 5 to 10 times the amount of retail, but that's changing. There's been no new supply added over the last decade. And we estimate that about 25% of the stock will be gone and repositioned over the next 5 years. So you have a declining stock coupled with retail sales, in-store sales that are increasing. And what's going to shake out is, you know, the story of the have and have-nots that we've seen over the last year. But again, I think it's just about being selective within the space. But I think if you're ignoring the space, then you're going to ignore some strong growth coming from retail going forward.
Interesting. Carly Tripp, thank you for joining us from Nuveen. Up next on the show, shares of QuantumScape falling yesterday after Scorpion Capital claimed the company was fraudulent. And now the company's CEO is responding. A sneak peek of his sit-down with Jim Cramer, which is coming tonight, right after the break. And we're still awaiting that joint news conference with President Biden and the Prime Minister of Japan, running a little bit later than we thought, but we will bring it to you live as soon as it happens in the Rose Garden.
Some trends are so influential, they can move entire sectors of the market. Take the price of oil. It has the potential to impact the performance of all energy companies. So why continue to take single stock risk? The Energy Sector Spider ETF offers the diversification of the entire energy sector while reducing single stock risk. The Energy Sector Spider, the next chapter in investing. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Go to sectorspiders.com for a prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully.
All the things, all around you, where you learn, work, and fly, we help make them healthier. We are the people of ABM. For more than 100 years, we've been a leader in making spaces cleaner, from the things you touch to the air you breathe. Today, more than 100,000 of us are innovating to ensure spaces are more efficient, healthier, and safer. ABM, making spaces healthier for you.
Born from discipline, consistency rewards. Columbia Threadneedle Investments.
You could think getting commission-free trades is as good as it gets, but you know better. At Schwab, free means more. You get commission-free online trades and quality trade executions on our powerful platform, plus a satisfaction guarantee. Expect more from your firm. Trade up to Schwab, the better place for traders.
Does your vitamin C last 24 hours? Only Nature's Bounty does. New Immune 24 Hour Plus has longer lasting vitamin C, plus herbal and other immune superstars. Only from Nature's Bounty.
A global battery arms race is underway. Critical materials like lithium are essential to our energy future, with demand projected to grow as much as 400%. A U.S.-based raw material supply chain is now a national priority. Standard Lithium is ready to lead. With our advanced direct lithium extraction technology, fast, sustainable, modern lithium production is here. Standard Lithium, America's 21st century lithium company.
Welcome back. We are still awaiting President Biden's news conference with Japan's Prime Minister, first world leader to meet with Biden at the White House. Kayla Tausche is here with what we should be expecting and looking out for, Kayla.
Well, Sarah, the expanded bilateral meeting that took place throughout this afternoon was expected to cover a host of issues from the Tokyo Olympics just 100 days away to potentially increased targets on climate change ahead of the Biden administration's climate summit next week, increased cooperation on vaccine sharing, and a pledge by Japan that we're expecting to come out later today, pledging $2 billion to help build out 5G networks and supply chains that do not rely on China's Huawei. Now, that last deliverable shows you just how largely Beijing looms over this summit between two nations that are not China. A senior administration official noted that Japan has to walk a very careful course here because of the deep economic ties and the close regional proximity between the two countries, but noted that they are going to send a clear message to China that they do not condone recent actions by China to fly bombers in Taiwan's airspace and to run live-fire military drills off of Taiwan's southwest coast, even as a Biden-appointed administration lands in the country there. So China will figure very prominently, but we expect whatever statement comes out of the bilateral meeting to be one that threads a pretty delicate needle here, where they are not seeking to provoke tensions, even while they're acknowledging that they do not support the actions that China has taken. That's the line that we expect both leaders to take when they appear at the podiums just a little bit later this afternoon. Wilf and Sarah.
Kayla, thanks so much for that. We look forward to it. A little bit delayed, but look forward to it nonetheless. Kayla Tausche. Up next, investors gearing up for a flood of earnings, and one key name to watch, a stay-at-home winner, Netflix. Will break down a preview of what to expect next week on Wall Street.
Consistency is a common thread that delivers insights, not reactions. Solutions, not excuses. Experience the difference consistency makes. Experience Columbia Threadneedle Investments.
FlexShares ETFs are built with advanced modeling to fill portfolio gaps and target specific goals, strengthening client confidence in you. Before investing, consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Go to flexshares.com for a prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully.
Born from discipline. Consistency rewards. Columbia Threadneedle Investments.
Hey, it's good to see you.
The company we've trusted to keep us working remotely is the same company we'll trust to bring us back together. Cisco, the bridge to possible.
Tonight, 8 dead in a mass shooting. What witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith, 7 Eastern, CNBC.
And welcome back to Guess the Price. Sal, what do you do?
Oh, I'm a retired postal worker.
Fantastic. Are you ready to play?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay, Johnny, tell him about Eargo.
These top-of-the-line hearing aids from Eargo are straight out of the future. They're rechargeable and virtually invisible in your ears.
Okay, Sal, how much do you think they cost?
Oh, gee, I don't know. $5,000?
Well, actually, for you, they don't cost anything.
Holy heck.
That's because federal employees, retirees, and their families can get these life-changing hearing aids at no cost.
Holy heck.
And you don't need to visit a doctor to get them. They ship right to your home and come with lifetime remote support. Convenient, right?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Heck yeah!
If you're active or retired U.S. military or a registered healthcare worker, you may be eligible for a 20% discount on Eargo Neo Hi-Fi. And if you're an active or retired federal employee, you can now get Eargo at no cost to you. Act now.
The price of Dogecoin surged this week, climbing nearly 500%. Let's get to Kate Rooney for more on this extraordinary spike. Kate.
Hey, well, we've been talking about this surge in Dogecoin, which coincided with an outage at Robinhood. The company just confirming that those two events were indeed connected. They blame that surge in trading action in Dogecoin for the outages. In a blog post now, the company is saying that the surge put, quote, extreme pressure on their crypto trading systems. They say, as we processed orders, one of our systems failed, which brought down the crypto order system. They say, all of this led to sporadic crypto order failures and delayed notifications for some customers. We had seen some complaints about this on Twitter. This is now resolved. Crypto trading is back up and running at Robinhood. But again, Dogecoin up some 400% this week. The cryptocurrency is now one of the biggest in the world. It did start originally as a joke back in 2013, but it is the big winner in crypto this week. Back to you guys.
Yeah, some people making a lot of money off that joke. Though you can't trade it at Coinbase, which is interesting. Kate Rooney, Kate, thank you.
Exactly.
Shares of QuantumScape finishing the week lower by 22%. This stock took a dive yesterday after a short report from Scorpion Capital claimed the company was fraudulent. QuantumScape's CEO just speaking to Jim Cramer about the report on Mad Money. He's going to be there tonight. Here's what he said about the company's battery technology.
I think we've made clear on one hand that we believe, addressed one of the fundamental issues that have held back solid-state batteries over the last several decades, which is, of course, a working solid-state separator. That's the heart of a solid-state battery. And that's a pretty substantial breakthrough. And if you talk to the experts, they will recognize that.
You can watch that full interview tonight. Mad Money, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. When we come back, your Wall Street look ahead, a slew of big earnings on deck for next week. The likes of Coca-Cola, Netflix, Snap, Las Vegas Sands, all on tap. A full rundown of what to expect when Closing Bell comes right back.
Market is unpredictable, BAM gives you certainty. In the face of market volatility and illiquidity, BAM insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, and adding BAM-insured municipal bonds to your portfolio is easy. Talk to your investment advisor. Visit buildamerica.com or look for BAM-eligible bonds on the Perform Portfolio Management System. BAM. Build America Mutual.
We now find that 85% of individual investors are interested in sustainable investing. Among millennials, the interest is even stronger. One of the big trends in sustainable investing is data and the ability to understand how sustainable your investments are. By taking that information into account, investors can make better decisions for the long term. Sustainability is not about one number. It's about variables like water usage, data privacy, consumer trust, diversity, land use, and conservation. All types of investors are now considering this in their investment decisions. This is not niche. 1 in $4 globally is following some form of sustainable investing. With sustainable investing at this scale, there's power to change the markets and have an impact on the issues investors care about most. I am Courtney Thompson, and we are Morgan Stanley.
Interactive Brokers charges 1.59% for a $100,000 margin loan. Do you know how much your broker charges? Upwards from 6.82% at Fidelity or Schwab, to as high as 7.45 to 7.75% at E-Trade or Ameritrade. Move your account to Interactive Brokers and save at least $5,200, or much more if you're trading big bucks.
I've never gone this fast before. I can't believe what I'm experiencing.
Knowing how competitive he is, and that's why he's so good. Amongst the fire, he has this calm.
This was my dream.
Big week for earnings on deck Monday. We'll hear from Coca-Cola, IBM, and United Airlines. And after Coca-Cola reports results on Monday, don't miss my interview with CEO James Quincy, the CEO of Coke, on Squawk on the Street, 10 a.m. Tuesday, Johnson & Johnson, Procter Gamble, Netflix, CSX all reporting. Wednesday, Verizon, Chipotle, Las Vegas Sands, and Whirlpool are on deck. AT&T, American Airlines, Intel, Mattel, and Snap on tap for Thursday. That's going to be the busiest day of earnings. And on Friday, we'll get numbers from American Express and Honeywell. Mike, about a third of the Dow, 72 S&P 500 companies reporting. And the setup gets tougher as we reach new record heights this week and close sharply higher, about 1.5% of gains for the S&P.
No doubt about it. The bar definitely is pretty high in terms of this built-in expectation that we're going to blow away all the forecast earnings that are, formal. Beating it at 81% rate right now. What I think is probably most important in aggregate is that we're looking at a 30% year-over-year growth rate in first quarter earnings. That's enabled the forward valuation of the market to actually remain stable. We're about 22.5 times earnings. This is where we were 10 months ago. So essentially, as the market has just marched higher persistently, earnings forecasts so far are keeping track. So I'm looking for some of the cyclical names there, like CSX, like Whirlpool, maybe Honeywell, to give us a little bit of a clue as to whether people are willing to sort of buy the industrial cyclicals up here after the run they've had.
Also, just point out, amazing week for Goldman Sachs in terms of their numbers, but Wells Fargo, the best performer this week, up 8% of the banks playing significant catch-up, I guess you could argue. And Mike, also of note, gold, best week for gold for a while. Nothing compared to Dogecoin, but still, nonetheless.
No, exactly. And, maybe gold was created as a joke. Who knows? But, no, it has been good. I mean, dollar down and also just real yields down is give a little bit of a bump to gold.
I think Mike just said Dogecoin is the new gold.
He did. Both are sort of jokes, though, he also said.
Well,
anyway.
Me on that, yeah.
We are out of time here on Closing Bell. Have a lovely weekend. Fast Money starts now.
I'm Melissa Lee, and this is Fast Money. Tonight's trader lineup: Tim Seymour, Brian Kelly, Steve Grasso, and James McDonald. Tonight on Fast, hidden gems in the record rally. The chart master has 3 names to bet on for a breakout
back in bond yields. So in a week when we also had incredible economic data, we had retail sales numbers, which were significantly stronger than expected, initial jobless claims, the New York Empire surveys, some of the other ISM numbers. So I think investors need to be looking for the cyclical stories. You know, the nice thing about this market is the breadth is really been as strong as we've seen at any point of this rally, and I'm not sure where you're going to want to say this rally began, but you know, certainly over the last year and a half, at different times we've struggled with rotation and which sectors cyclical versus growth versus value, et cetera. So the exciting part about this week was as we got economic reinforcement on the economy, we got at least a sense that some of those cyclicals could rally. And meanwhile, mega cap tech might have been the story of this week if you think of the moves across the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this week proved that cats and dogs can live together thanks to a low 10-year yield. Steve Grasso.
Right. You know, that's an important point. I was found myself nodding in agreement to when Tim was saying that the breadth of the market. We look back to where the outperformance of value has outperformed the mega cap tech or growth complex. It's interesting. Look at the chart. Greenlight actually put out a chart with their holders, their investor letter, that showed that the outperformance of the mega cap tech or growth has outperformed since the financial crisis. Now you get this blip where value has outperformed, but it's just that, Melissa. It's this tiny little. It's not even a hockey stick, right? It's the beginnings of a hockey stick, which means to me that there's much more of a runway for value to outperform. But to Tim's point, if everything is working now, then the most non-consensus view is that what I said the other day when we were talking about Tony Dwyer, when he was taking some chips off the table as a little bit of a strategic move. I think the thing that screws most people up here or that upsets the cart is if we go much higher. I'm looking for the S&P to go to 4,500, which is about 7% higher.
Wow.
If it does a back check to the 50-day moving average, we're looking at a 4% drop. I think risk-reward stay along the market.
So here's what's interesting about tonight's panel. We've got Brian Kelly and James McDonald on the same night, and I think James has surpassed Brian Kelly in bearishness. He is now the owner of the bear suit, zipped up nice and snug, James. So you've been predicting a decline in the markets for a long time, and here we are, sitting at records. What happened to your thesis? Have you reevaluated, or are you still loaded for a pullback?
Well, thank you for the question, and it's an honor to surpass BK in anything. This is obviously a dubious honor. You know, what I underestimated was the power of the Fed and the power of economic empowerment for consumers. When we look at data over decades and decades and decades and compare where markets can go, there's a presumption of normalized monetary policy. There's a presumption of normalized evaluation of risk with regard to earnings, debt, and employment. And we saw an evisceration of earnings, an increase of debt to all-time records, and obviously a catastrophic blow to employment. What we did not calculate was the power of the government to provide paychecks to people, to provide income, and to provide comfort that whatever it took to do to protect the economy and to propel, you know, our ability to go to work at some point, they would do. And so we far underestimated the power of the government. If we had created a scenario before COVID where every American got a paycheck.
We are going to go to the White House, to the Rose Garden, where President Biden and the Prime Minister of Japan have just held a meeting. Let's listen in.
The Prime Minister's brought the sun out, so he can do about anything. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for being here. It's been my pleasure to welcome Prime Minister Suga to the White House. This is our first in-person meeting here, the first head of state that I've asked in my administration to come to the White House. Yoshi, thank you for making the long trip to Washington. We've already met several times virtually at a G7 meeting and a Quad Leaders Summit, but I greatly appreciate the chance to spend time with you in person and to exchange our ideas face to face. There's no substitute for face-to-face discussions. We are still taking COVID precautions, being careful, but our commitment to meet in person is indicative of the importance, the value we both place on this relationship. between Japan and the United States, this partnership. We had a very productive discussions today. When nations as close as ours get together, we always look for operations and opportunities to do more. And today was no exception. So Yoshi, you'll probably be seeing a lot more of me in the future. Today, Prime Minister Suga and I affirmed our ironclad support for U.S.-Japanese alliance and for our shared security. We committed to working together to take on the challenges from China and on issues like the East China Sea, the South China Sea, as well as North Korea, to ensure a future of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Japan and the United States are two strong democracies in the region, and we're committed to defending and advancing our shared values, including human rights and the rule of law. We're going to work together to prove that democracies can still compete and win in the 21st century. We can deliver for our people in the face of a rapidly changing world. So today, we're announcing a new competitive and reliance partnership, CORE, between Japan and the United States that will enhance our ability to meet the pressing challenges of our time. Together meet those challenges. Top of our agenda is, of course, getting the pandemic under control and helping our friends and neighbors throughout the Indo-Pacific region to recover. Earlier this year, we, together with India and Australia, launched the landmark Quad Vaccine Partnership to expand the manufacturing of COVID-19 vaccines and assist countries throughout the region with vaccination efforts. And we agreed to enhance our support for global vaccination efforts through the ACT Accelerator and COVID Facility. We're also going to do more beyond this pandemic to advance longer-term goals for health security, reform of the World Health Organization, and establishing a new partnership on health security to build better preparedness for the next pandemic, because there will be others. Secondly, Japan and the United States are both deeply invested in innovation and looking to the future. That includes making sure we invest in and protect the technologies that will maintain and sharpen our competitive edge. And those technologies are governed by shared democratic norms that we both share, norms set by democracies, not by autocracies. So we're going to work together across a range of fields, from promoting secure and reliable 5G networks to increasing our cooperation on supply chains for critical sectors like semiconductors, to driving joint research in areas like AI, genomics, quantum computing, and much more. Thirdly, our nations are committed to taking aggressive action to meet the threats of climate change. Next week, I'll be hosting the Climate Leaders Summit, which Prime Minister Suga also plans to attend, thankfully, to rally key nations of the world to making ambitious climate commitments in the lead-up to Glasgow Summit later this year. Japan and the United States are both committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, and we know to do that will require setting and meeting our 2030 goals. And we'll work together to advance clean energy technologies and help nations throughout the Indo-Pacific region, especially developing countries, develop renewable energies and decarbonize their economies. And finally, both Prime Minister Suga and I value the incredible partnership that exists, not just between our governments, but between the Japanese people and the American people. Last month, we jointly marked the 10th year anniversary of the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster that cost so many lives in Japan. I visited that area shortly after it happened. In our private lunch, the Prime Minister and I talked about when I was Vice President visiting the families in the region to show support of the United States. We continue to mourn the loss of all those folks and to honor the extraordinary joint effort between Japan and the American people in the wake of that tragedy to recover and to rebuild. And those personal bonds of friendship and connection, they're the ones that are going to keep this alliance strong and vibrant for decades to come. And I'm especially proud that today we agreed to resume what is called the Mansfield Fellowship Program to promote people-to-people connections between our countries. Before Mike Mansfield, who was a beloved ambassador to Japan, became ambassador, he was a mentor of mine when I came to the Senate after my wife and daughter were killed. And he helped me along in ways I can't even explain in the United States Senate. And I'm proud that this legacy continues to be honored as part of the close, enduring partnership between our nations. And Yossi, I know how proud you are of the people of Japan are. You've got a Japanese boy coming over here, and guess what? He won the Masters. He won the Masters. He won the green jacket. And Matsuyama was the first Japanese player to take home that green jacket at the Masters tournament this week. So let me say congratulations, Japan, as well on that feat. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for making the trip. I look forward to all that Japan and the United States will accomplish together in the coming years. It was a great honor having you as the first head of state in my administration. The floor is yours.
この度、ここワシントン DC への訪問を実現できたことを大変嬉しく思います。温かくお迎えいただいたバイデン大統領とハリス副大統領に心から感謝申し上げます。そして準備にご尽力をいただいたすべての政府関係者の皆様に米国は日本の
The United States is Japan's best friend. Japan and the U.S. are allies that share universal values such as freedom, democracy, and human rights. Our alliance has served its role as the foundation of peace and stability for the Indo-Pacific region and the world. In light of the current regional situation and the severe security environment, the importance of our alliance has reached new heights. Based on such common recognition, at today's summit, we engaged in far-reaching and candid exchange of views on each other's political principles, challenges faced in each of our nations, our common vision, and other matters. President Biden and I reaffirmed the recognitions confirmed at the Japan-US 2+2 held last month and agreed to engage in initiatives for the region based upon such recognitions. We also discussed the free and open Indo-Pacific. We agreed that while Japan and the U.S. will take the lead to promote the vision through concrete efforts, we will also cooperate with other countries and regions, including the ASEAN, Australia, and India. We also had serious talks on China's influence over the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific and the world at large. We agreed to oppose any attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion in the East and South China Seas and intimidation of others in the region. At the same time, we agreed on the necessity for each of us to engage in frank dialogue with China and, in so doing, to pursue stability of international relations while upholding universal values. On North Korea, we confirmed our commitment to the CVID of all weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles of all ranges, and agreed to demand North Korea to fulfill its obligations under Security Council resolutions. On the issue of abduction, we reaffirmed that it is a grave human rights issue and that our two countries will work together to seek immediate resolution by North Korea. In countering North Korea and for the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific, both of us recognize that trilateral cooperation, including the ROK, has never been as important as today, and agreed to promote such collaboration. Noting that the regional security environment has become increasingly severe, the deterrence and response capabilities of our alliance must be strengthened. I conveyed my resolve to reinforce Japan's defense capabilities, while President Biden again demonstrated America's commitment to the defense of Japan, including the application of Article 5 of the Japan-U.S. Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security for the Senkaku Islands. We also agreed to accelerate the review underway between our two countries on the specific means to strengthen our alliance. At the same time, from the perspective of mitigating the impact on local communities, including first and foremost Okinawa, we agreed to promote the realignment of the U.S. forces in Japan, including the relocation of Air Station Futenma to Henoko, which is the only solution to avoid its permanent use. In responding to the unprecedented crisis faced by the international community, such as COVID-19 and climate change, Japan and the U.S. are mutually indispensable partners. President Biden and I share the recognition that our two nations bear significant responsibilities to lead multilateral initiatives toward the resolution of such issues. In this context, we agreed to respect international order based upon multilateralism and the rule of law, while exercising joint leadership to build back better our global community. Based on such outcome of our meeting today, we are releasing the Japan-U.S. Joint Leaders Statement, Global Partnership for a New Era, which will serve as the guiding post for our alliance in the times ahead, which strongly demonstrates our solidarity towards the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific. From the perspective of our two nations leading efforts to build back better, President Biden and I agreed on the Japan-U.S. core partnership and confirmed to promote cooperation in common priority areas, including promotion of competitiveness and innovation in digital science and technology, COVID-19 countermeasures, green growth, and climate change.
On competitiveness and innovation, under the recognition that digital economy and new technologies in particular will bring about social transformation and huge economic opportunities, we have agreed that Japan and the U.S. will work together on the promotion of R&D on various areas, including digital area and others. Regarding response to COVID-19, from short-term responses to longer-term efforts, including the preparations for future similar incidents, we will work on the promotion of multi-layered cooperations regarding the overall supply of vaccines and the reinforcement of Japan-U.S. public and private cooperation in the area of global health. We confirmed that cooperations between our governments will continue. In order to ensure equitable access to vaccines, including access by developing countries, multilateral and regional corporations, will be promoted. On the matter of climate change, at the upcoming climate summit to be hosted by the U.S. next week, or at COP26 and beyond, we confirmed that Japan and the U.S. will lead the global decarbonization. In order to further strengthen cooperation in areas such as the implementation of the Paris Agreement, clean energy technologies, or decarbonization transition of developing countries, I agreed with President Biden to launch climate partnership on ambition, decarbonization, and clean energy. Under these initiatives, I wish to give impetus to concrete and comprehensive Japan-US cooperations. I discussed the increase of discriminations or violences against Asian people across the U.S. with President Biden and agreed that discrimination by race cannot be permitted in any societies. We agreed on this regard. President Biden's comment that discriminations and violences cannot be allowed and that he firmly opposes was extremely encouraging for me, and I have renewed my confidence in American democracy once again. I told the President about my determination to realize the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games this summer as a symbol of a global unity. President Biden once again expressed his support for this determination. Japan is listening to and learning from WHO and experts, doing everything possible to contain infection and to realize safe and secure games from scientific and objective perspectives. We will do our utmost in our preparation. Freedom, democracy, human rights, rule of law. As we firmly defend and uphold these universal values that Japan and the U.S. share, I look forward to the actual implementation of the outcomes of today's significant meeting and to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific by further collaboration and deeper cooperation with Joe. I once again express my heartfelt gratitude for the kind invitation. Thank you.
Now we'll each take a few questions, and I'll begin by recognizing the Associated Press. Amir, you have the first question. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. President, in your last press conference, you said successful presidents prioritize, and that you were focusing your agenda on one thing at a time. And I'd like to just ask you, what would you say to many of Americans who voted for you about the legislative progress on gun control and police reform, having to wait while you pursue infrastructure? Given that we continue to see these incidents with mass shootings and also police-involved shootings, including the incident that a lot of us saw in Chicago most recently, do you feel any need to reprioritize your agenda?
I've never not prioritized this. No one has worked harder to deal with the violence used by individuals using weapons than I have. I'm the only one ever to have passed an assault weapons ban. I'm the only one that ever had a 10-year ban on assault weapons and clips of more than 10 bullets. Immediately upon us becoming in office, having an attorney general, I asked him to put together the things I could do by executive order, including dealing with new guns that can be made, you can buy in pieces and put together, and other initiatives. I strongly support the universal background checks, which I continue to push. The Congress has to step up and act. The Senate has to act. And I strongly support and continue and never stop supporting the ban on assault weapons and magazines that hold more than 10 bullets. It doesn't mean that I can't also be working at the same time on the economy and on COVID. But it's not a question of my being able to set the agenda in the Senate as to what they will move to first. And so I continue, and I strongly, strongly urge my Republican friends in the Congress who even refuse to bring up the House-passed bill to bring it up now. This has to end. It's a national embarrassment. It is a national embarrassment what's going on. And it's not only these mass shootings that are occurring. Every single day, there's a mass shooting in the United States if you count all those who were killed out on the streets of our cities and our rural areas. It's a national embarrassment and must come to an end. And one last thing, the folks who own weapons, the folks who own guns, they support universal background checks. The majority of them think we should not be selling assault weapons. Who in God's name needs a weapon that can hold 100 rounds or 40 rounds or 20 rounds? It's just wrong. And I'm not going to give up till it's done. You have a question you want to offer? Not a question. Recognize someone, Mr. Prime Minister.
Sankei Shimbunの杉本さん。
Mr. Sugimoto of Sankei Newspaper, thank you very much. My name is Sugimoto of Sankei Newspaper. At the summit, I believe that China policy was one of the central agenda items. So my question is on China policy. Both governments consider that peace and stability of Taiwan is of great importance, and that had been the agreement between the two countries. What kind of exchange of views were conducted on this matter at today's meeting? In order to deter contingency in the straits, what can Japan do? And what can Japan do when actually a contingency occurs in the Taiwan Straits? Did the Prime Minister explain to President Biden what Japan can do under such circumstances? And also, were there discussions on Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region human rights issue? Grave concern is shared by the two countries, but Japan is the only G7 country that has not imposed sanctions on China. Were you able to gain President Biden's understanding towards such position? As we engaged in exchange of views over the regional situation, we also discussed the circumstances in Taiwan and Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region as well. I refrain from mentioning details since it pertains to diplomatic exchanges, but there is already an agreed recognition over the importance of peace and stability of the Taiwan Straits between Japan and the United States, which was reaffirmed on this occasion. I also explained Japan's position and initiatives regarding the situation in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region to the President, who I think understood my points.
Next question goes to Trevor, Reuters.
Thank you. Mr. President, it's been a while since we've heard an update from you on how the talks are going with Iran. How are they going, and do you regard their decision to enrich to 60% as a step backwards, as a sign that they aren't serious about those negotiations? And for the Prime Minister, just a question on whether it's irresponsible to move forward with the Olympics when you have public health experts telling you that Japan is not ready to do so. Thank you.
Let me respond to the Iran question. We do not support and do not think it's at all helpful that Iran is saying it's going to move to enrich to 60%. It is contrary to the agreement. We are, though, nonetheless, pleased that Iran has continued to agree to engage in discussions, in direct discussions with us and with our partners on how we move forward and what is needed to allow us to move back into the JOPCA so that we're part of it again, that we should have never gotten out of, in my view, without us making concessions that we're just not willing to make. And so the discussions are underway. I think it's premature to make a judgment as to what the outcome will be, but we're still talking.
If I may invite Shintomi-san of Kyodo News. Yes, I have a question to Prime Minister Suga regarding the Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympics planned for this summer. You have garnered support from President Biden. Did the President mention about the concrete promise to send American athletes or any positive comments? If you can tell us about the exchanges and the conversations during the meeting about the COVID-19 vaccines or about climate change, you have discussed these aspects about the schedule of providing the vaccines, or by 2030, the reduction target of the gases. Any numerical targets or actions were discussed, please? As was mentioned at the beginning, I expressed my determination to realize the Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympic Games as a symbol of global unity this summer. And President Biden once again expressed his support. Japan will continue careful and full preparation in order to realize the Tokyo Games this summer, in order to ensure equitable access to vaccines for COVID-19. We also affirmed that Japan and the US will continue our cooperation. Regarding the climate change, this is a matter that both President Biden and I emphasize. So during the talk today, we have confirmed to strengthen bilateral cooperation and collaboration in the area of climate change, and have agreed to launch the Japan-US Climate Partnership, which is extremely meaningful and significant.
Well, thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I look forward to having you back. Thank you again, everyone.
We've been listening to President Biden and the Prime Minister of Japan meeting in the Rose Garden, fielding some questions. Let's get to Kayla Tausche, who's been listening to this whole thing. Kayla.
Well, it was a pretty sanguine press conference for what it was, Melissa, the first in-person bilateral meeting between President Biden and another head of state. They played it pretty safe with the topics that they fielded and with their messages on each of those topics. President Biden saying that he could consider several different legislative priorities at once, that just because he has begun the process to negotiate an infrastructure package and an economic package does not mean that he doesn't also care about gun control in the first question. And then Prime Minister Suga taking a moment to say that President Biden did in fact support the country's decision to hold the Tokyo Olympics, despite the fact that public health experts have been critical of the move. And just last night, a senior administration official said that it was still too early for the administration to say officially whether it would endorse sending American athletes over to Tokyo to participate in those games. But where adversaries were concerned, Melissa, both leaders walked right up to the line but did not provoke either Iran or China, despite given an opportunity to do so. President Biden, when asked about an update on nuclear talks with Iran, saying that it would be premature to gauge exactly how they're going to pan out. And on China, Prime Minister Suga saying that essentially that his views on the Taiwan Strait and the aggression that has been exercised by China there in recent months, that his views are clear and that he shared them with President Biden, but didn't elaborate much here for the public. Melissa?
All right, Kayla, thank you. Kayla Tausche, we're going to take a quick break. Up next, Options Action.
Options Action is sponsored by Thinkorswim by TD Ameritrade.
meetings and 3 stops today. There's just never enough time. If you've ever considered flying private jets, you have to check out One Flight's badge. The badge makes searching and booking private jets as simple as booking a hotel. Just type in your location and find the closest airport. Then choose from over 4,000 jets in one place. When I land, there's always a car waiting for me, courtesy of One Flight. What's your time worth? Badging.
A global battery arms race is underway. Critical materials like lithium are essential to our energy future, with demand projected to grow as much as 400%. A U.S.-based raw material supply chain is now a national priority. Standard Lithium is ready to lead. With our advanced direct lithium extraction technology, fast, sustainable, modern lithium production is here. Standard Lithium, America's 21st century lithium company.
Bank earnings are always hard to get your head around. The headlines are a dice roll, and there are lots of dice rollers out there who could immediately be disappointed. So call me concerned that this red-hot group could hurt the tenor of the earnings season. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
And welcome, Options Action fans. I'm Melissa Lee. Tonight's traders, Carter Worth, Mike Coe, and Tony Zhang. Let's get right to it. Check out shares of Netflix going, well, nowhere. The streaming giant now just barely positive on the year, down more than 8% from its all-time highs. But our chart master, Carter Worth, says the stock could be setting up for a big rally. So, Carter, take it away.
You bet. I mean, I think it's a perfect standoff, right? Equilibrium does exist, but it doesn't last. At some point, the bears or the bulls get the ball. So let's look at 4 charts. They're all the same chart, just with different annotations. Here is a 2-year chart of Netflix, no judgments or drawings by me. Now look at the next chart. What I've tried to point out here is the move from the lows of 2019 to the summer high of 2020. Now, Netflix goes up 128%. In that period, the S&P went up 40. So you're talking about a 3-fold increase over the S&P. So the question is, this sideways period since, is that an acceptable thing? Is it just the pause that refreshes, or is it somehow stalling? Now take a look at 2 ways to draw the lines. Next chart. So there is the sideways action. Again, the ascent off the low, a 3-fold increase over the S&P, up 128 versus 42, and now this tight range-bound trading. What it really represents is multiple compression. The stock got ahead of itself, and it keeps performing and performing, buying back shares, beating its numbers, maybe the margins are growing, and at some point it's getting so cheap that in principle it has breakout potential. Final chart, another way to draw the lines. It's an ascending triangle. And so the relative performance is very poor. To be unchanged in 8 months, 9 months, when the Russell 2000 is up 35, 40%, the S&P's up 20, is that the problem, or is it simply because it was such a good performer preceding the period of rest? That's my thinking, and last quarter it gapped up in a big way. We think it gaps up again.
All right. Mike, what's your trade?
Yeah, so Netflix is an interesting case. I mean, there are obviously some real fundamental strengths here. I mean, 200 million subscribers. Obviously, the pandemic helped fuel some of that growth, but we are seeing a lot of reasons why it might continue going forward, and they are clearly the winner in the streaming space. And Carter pointed out that their valuation is basically been declining for some period of time. It's actually right now the PE is essentially at a 6-year low. Thing to remember, though, is that's still just under 70 times trailing 12-month earnings. So cheaper, but not cheap. So I think the way that we want to try to play Netflix going into earnings is to take advantage of 2 dynamics that we see in the price of options right now. First, the 3-month options in Netflix are essentially at a 2-year low in terms of their implied volatility. So we get to own some convexity by purchasing those. And at the same time, because we have the earnings catalyst coming up, the near-dated options are exceptionally expensive. It's implying right now about a 7.5% move. That may not sound like much given how much the stock moved the last quarter, but that is in line with the 8-quarter average. And this, of course, is a very big company and a very high share price. So 7.5% would represent a fairly big move. I was looking specifically at the July 560 calls, buying those, and then selling the weekly 580s. Net, you would be laying out about $23 to do that trade, a little bit more than the distance between the strikes. Remember, the idea is to own that longer dated call and collect the premium from the one that's going to expire a week from now. I think this is a way that we can take advantage of the technical setup that Carter sees, mitigate some of the downside risk that we are seeing, maybe just because the market is a little bit extended, because the stock is quite expensive. Take advantage of the fact that the short-dated options are relatively pricey here.
All right. Tony now, though, has a counterpoint here that speaks directly to the effectiveness of using options around Netflix. Tony.
Yeah, so I'm not as bullish here going into Netflix's earnings. Now, I do admit that I see Carter's charts, and I see the fact that we are clearly here at a 9-month equilibrium, and it does look like it's a continuation pattern that could resolve itself to the upside. But when I look at the underlying fundamentals, I do have a belief that this equilibrium will likely resolve itself to the downside, because first of all, the relative strength of Netflix has really started to come down and fall apart here at the beginning of March, starting to underperform the XLC sector. That's the first evidence that I have of potential underperformance. But when you look at the business itself, revenue growth here for 2021 is expected to decelerate down to about 19% from the high 20s. And more importantly, when you look at Netflix downloads compared to its other competitors, Netflix is down about 26% this particular quarter versus Disney Plus is up 54%. So this shows me a bit of bifurcation here in the streaming space. But I do think that options is the one way to play this, because Mike's trade is actually not as bullish. It's more mildly bullish, actually fairly neutral here, only risking 4.5%. So, and I do see that a potential surprise here for Netflix is the international segment. They have been testing mobile-only plans that are relatively cheap for the international market. That could surprise us to the upside. So utilizing options with limited risk is the way to play this, in my opinion.
Mike, what's your take on Tony's take?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right. I mean, really what we are looking at is decelerating top-line growth. I think we still will see impressive growth. I think it's also important to remember that the hurdle has been lowered a little bit. Even the bulls have lowered some of their global sub-growth estimates for this quarter, so that might mean that they actually, with that lower hurdle, could still do well coming out of earnings. But I do think that we want to be very cautious about taking net longs in high valuation stocks like this in a high valuation market. There's been a lot of bullish sentiment. There's a lot of bullish sentiment in this stock. I think using options is really the only way we can basically mitigate that downside risk in case things turn a little bit ugly here.
All right, coming up, Tony's got some intel on Intel. We'll reveal what it is after this.
Options Action is sponsored by Thinkorswim by TD Ameritrade.
I have an idea for a trade.
Oh, yeah? You gonna place it?
Not until I'm sure.
Why don't you call TD Ameritrade for a strategy gut check?
What's that?
You run it by an expert, you talk about the risk and potential profit and loss.
Should have used that before I hired my interior decorator.
Voila.
Maybe a couple of throw pillows would help.
Get a strategy gut check from our trade desk.
With education technology growing to $6.1 billion by 2025, there is no better time to build the future with Abi, an AI-enabled tutor named one of Time's best inventions in 2020. Abi makes school fun and learning easy. Visit joinabi.com for more information.
Keeping your oyster business growing has you swamped. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. The moment you sponsor a job on Indeed, you get a short list of quality candidates from our resume database. Claim your $75 credit when you post your first job at Indeed.com/promo.
No matter what happened in 2020, it's a brand new year. And with HelloFresh, it's 365 days to start fresh. 365 ways to make time for yourself. Make time for the kiddos and make their new all-time favorite meal. Just take it step by step and we'll make it happen. One dish at a time.
Go to HelloFresh.com/TV12 and use code TV12 for up to 12 free meals.
gentlemen, welcome back to Guess the Price. Okay, Johnny, tell our contestants about Eargo.
These top-of-the-line hearing aids from Eargo are straight out of the future. They're rechargeable and virtually invisible in your ears. And you don't need to visit a doctor to get them. They ship right to your door and come with lifetime remote support.
Convenient, right? Guess the price, and they're yours.
$8,000.
Too high.
$6,000.
No.
$5,000.
Too high.
$3,500?
Oh, too high. Eargos are affordable and retail for about half the cost of traditional hearing aids. Unfortunately, nobody won. Johnny, tell our contestants about their lovely parting gift.
It's a Peruvian pan flute.
Well, that's all the time we have for now. We will see you next time. Bye-bye. I heard that.
We're here and ready to help you with your hearing loss with free remote hearing checks and consultations by our licensed hearing professionals. Give yourself the gift of good hearing again. And if you're an active or retired federal employee, you can now get Eargo at no cost to you. Act now.
When traders tell us how to make Thinkorswim even better, we listen. Like Jack. He wanted a streamlined version he could access anywhere, no download necessary. And Kim. She wanted to execute a preset trade strategy in seconds. So, we gave him Thinkorswim Web. Because platforms this innovative aren't just made for traders, they're made by them. Thinkorswim Trading from TD Ameritrade.
Welcome back to Options Action. We are gearing up for a huge week for earnings. We just tackled Netflix, but Tony's got his eye on another name. So, Tony, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at Intel because Intel's had a pretty tough year, but it is up 30% year to date. But I do think it's potentially time to fade that strength. If we take a look at the chart itself, we have this double top that recently formed here around $68. It got rejected at that level this week. That certainly puts a potential top here for Intel. But more importantly, when you look at Intel relative to its sector, the SOX Philly Semiconductor Etf, this is a stock that has continued to underperform its sector since June of last year. And despite this year's strong performance, it has failed to underperform. And that type of poor relative strength is what I see going into earnings that is potentially a factor for fading this particular strength. If you look at the business itself, this is really where Intel continues to come under pressure into its two main businesses. On the data center side, both NVIDIA and ARM is starting to muscle in on that 85% market share that Intel currently owns. And AMD with Taiwan Semiconductors is starting to beat Intel on both price and performance with their PC chips, something that Intel generates more than 50% of their revenue from. And despite the foundry investments that Intel has made, Taiwan Semiconductors is still going to have to manufacture Intel's high-performance chips for the next few years. So it really speaks to how far behind the curve Intel is in this particular arms race. So for those reasons, I think Intel is likely going to underperform here going into the earnings announcement. And if you look at the earnings themselves, the market is implying a relatively muted move here, only implying about a 5.8% move, while the stock has moved on average about 7.8% over the last 8 quarters. So I'm taking more of a bearish to slightly neutral view here for Intel by going out to May. I'm selling the 65.70 call spread here, collecting about $1.68 in terms of a credit, which is about 33% of the width. And this is a type of trade structure that allows me to profit as long as Intel stays below $65 at expiration here in May.
Carter, how does that chart look? Tony highlighted the underperformance relative to the semiconductor index.
Right. So there are 30 constituents in the SOX. The SOX dates back to 1994, and Intel is right now making all-time relative lows. Yes, the last 3 months are bad. It's never been lower relative to its peer group. There's also this. The stock itself is still below its dot-com peak. There's something not right. I would just stay away from it.
Huh. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the company needs to turn itself around, and Pat Gelsinger is probably the person to do it. He is an engineer, and that's really where they've fallen behind. I mean, when we think about what's in the box, it's not Intel inside that people are worried about. It's whether it has an NVIDIA GPU. Everybody's more excited about that. So I am enthusiastic, at least, that the new management could turn around that story. But obviously, the company itself has some things to work out before that happens, I think.
All right, well, we just laid out trades on Netflix and Intel into earnings. And when buying options like into a catalyst like earnings, it's important to buy right. And sometimes that's easier said than done. So luckily, Mike is here to explain how to do exactly that. Time for a call to action. Mike.
Yeah, so, one of the other spaces that we're going to see some earnings next week is in the telecoms, Verizon, AT&T. And, when we do a buy right, here are the important things to consider. Typically, you want to do this on a stock that you want to own. You want to do it so, though, on a stock that has maybe only modest upside potential. Why is that? Because you're going to be selling an upside call. This is a situation where you're worrying less about catalysts, less about capital appreciation, and more about yield. I was taking a look at AT&T, which is a very high-yielding stock. And when you see high dividend yields like that, that is actually a sign that a stock could potentially be struggling. And AT&T has been. They have some legacy problems in South America. They have legacy problems with their wireline business. But they have covered this dividend. I think they will continue to. And I think the dividend itself provides a level of support. You can look to buy that stock. I was looking at that. It was about $29.50 earlier today. And you could sell those June 31 calls for about 50 cents against it. Now, importantly, those calls expire before the next dividend date, so you actually are essentially creating a new one for yourself by selling those, and the yield would be just under 1.7% on a standstill basis between now and June expiration. So the important thing to remember when you're looking at buy rights, which is probably the most basic option strategy and the one that a lot of people begin with, choose stocks that you want to own that you don't think are going to basically take off, because you're going to be selling off some of that upside, and where you're basically just looking to enhance the yield. And this is one of those situations, I think, and actually this is one I'm putting into my account.
Carter, in your view, is AT&T a stock you want to own?
Well, it's a bond, right? I mean, in a world where you have record low high yield rates, this is a 7% yield, and they do cover it. We have two charts if you want to look. So the first, again, no judgments or annotations, no comments. And the second is what my eye sees. So shockingly, of course, AT&T is only fractionally above its pandemic low of March, but it is above, and that formation would suggest inching higher. And so this is exactly where an option strategy, the one laid out by Mike, is the right thing to do.
Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly right. With AT&T, you have this large diversified business that's expected to grow 1% in terms of revenue this year. So as Carter put it, a bond is exactly what you're seeing here, is a stock that pays about a 7% dividend yield that is well covered by the cash flows. So for an investor who's seeking income, this is kind of your dream stock. Especially on the technical perspective, as Carter was saying, you have a nice range-bound trade here. That's ideal for selling a cover call, because you can tactically sell cover calls. The one suggestion that I could make on that cover call is Mike has chosen to go out to June, those 31 calls. You're collecting about 50 cents. You can collect about 30 cents for the May 31 calls, which generate just about 1% of the underlying stock's value in half the amount of time. Now, if you are able to have AT&T close below 31 by May, you have the opportunity to potentially sell another one in June, collect another 30 cents. This way, you'll eke out a little bit more profit in terms of income by selling a shorter dated option that's going to decay a little bit faster.
Mike, is there a reason why you chose June over May, as Tony's recommending?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he's saying is actually a good thought. I think it's important to remember that the nearer dated the options are, the more quickly they are going to decay. The tricky part is that the cheaper those options become, the bigger the bid-ask spread and the commissions make in terms of taking away some of the yield that you're going to collect. So it's kind of a trade-off there. But I think, the way he's thinking about it, that may set up well for some people. Just make sure you watch your execution and make sure that you have low costs. And, then you will obviously need to manage this trade a little bit more, because when May expiration comes, you'll want to sell that next one out. But I think that's also a good idea. So either of those work for me.
All right. Up next, I got your tweets and the final call.
Options Action is sponsored by Thinkorswim by TD Ameritrade.
I'm searching for info on options trading, and look, it feels like I'm just wasting time.
That's why TD Ameritrade designed a first-of-its-kind personalized education center. Their award-winning content is tailored to fit your investing goals and interests, and it learns with you. So as you become smarter, so do its recommendations.
So it's like my streaming service.
Well, except now you're binge learning.
See how you could become a smarter investor with a personalized education from TD Ameritrade. Visit tdameritrade.com/learn.
Looks like clear clear skies for the weekend. All you road trippers out there, looks like traffic's going to be smooth sailing.
Stay in your lane with Cup Phone. The WeatherTech Cup Phone keeps your phone secure, fits virtually any size cup holder, and allows easy access even while charging. See everything else Cup Phone can do at WeatherTech.com.
A vacation starts with how you get there. A private jet experience from One Flight's budget. You've got to see this. Plug in your itinerary, search from over 5,000 planes, pay, and you're on your way. Nothing better than a personalized meal on board.
It should be a beautiful day in the Bahamas, Mr. Hirschbach. We should be landing in about 20 minutes.
A great vacation always starts with your flight experience. Use your time wisely, just badge it.
I'm giving you my game plan. Then I'm driving through Metro Miles potential with the CEO. And you don't want to miss my exclusive with QuantumScape. Plus, I'm going off the tape with InsurTech Zebra. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
Tonight, 8 dead in a mass shooting. What witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith, 7 Eastern, CNBC.
A global battery arms race is underway. Critical materials like lithium are essential to our energy future, with demand projected to grow as much as 400%. A U.S.-based raw material supply chain is now a national priority. Standard Lithium is ready to lead. With our advanced direct lithium extraction technology, fast, sustainable, modern lithium production is here. Standard Lithium, America's 21st century lithium company.
Welcome back to Options Action. Time to take your tweets. Our first viewer asks, I purchased May 21st Amazon $3,800 options that have been in the money since the start of the week. Looking at the chart, I'm bullish, but with earnings fast approaching, should I continue to hold? What do you think, Carter?
Well, you always take earnings risk, but this is identical to Netflix, which is to say this stock doubled the performance of the S&P off its pandemic low, and now it's been resting for 7 months. A breakout here, a measured move, implies exactly 3,800.
All right, so the chart lines up. Mike, your recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, the implied volatility is in line with the realized volatility, so actually owning options are a fair value bet, so I like that as the way to make your long plays here.
All right, our next viewer asks, what are your thoughts on Halliburton bought some January 2022 $25 calls for $1.60? Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, so these calls are just slightly in the money right now or just slightly profitable. So it depends on what your long-term views here are on Halliburton. My views are that Halliburton is starting to underperform. Energy shares are starting to underperform. I'm concerned of a bit of a pullback here.
Carter, your quick take on the chart here?
There's an old-time technical expression. It doesn't act well. It's not good.
Enough said, I guess. Time for the final call. Carter, kick it off.
Sure. Netflix. We'll throw Amazon in there as well.
Tony?
Fading the strength here in Intel, selling a May call credit spread.
Mike Coe.
I like AT&T for buy rights and calendar spreads on Netflix going into earnings.
All right, that does it for us here on Options Action. We'll be back here next Friday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But in the meantime, do not go anywhere. Mad Money with Jim Cramer starts right now. Have a great weekend.
My mission is simple, to make you money. I'm here to level the playing field for all investors. There's always a bull market somewhere, and I promise to help you find it. Mad Money starts now.
Hey, I'm Cramer. Welcome to Mad Money. Welcome to Cramerica. Other people, my friends, I'm just trying to make a little money. My job is not just to entertain, but to educate and teach you. So call me at 1-800-743-CBC or tweet me at Jim Cramer. When is it going to come in already? I mean, that is the question on everyone's lips, but it's the wrong question. As the averages crash through more records, when is it going to come in already? I mean, that is the question on everyone's lips, but it's the wrong question. As the averages crash through more records, Red Hat, I think it's too early to tell, but the stock's been hanging in there. And lately, the older tech names have been pretty darn strong. HP, Oracle, Dell, maybe IBM joins them. Tuesday morning, we get results from three companies that we are typically, let's just call them stalwarts of the earnings season: Abbott Labs, Johnson & Johnson, and Procter Gamble. Abbott's done such great work on COVID diagnostics. Hey, the at-home test is here. That it's hard to believe they won't hit it out of the park. J&J's gotten a lot more controversial, though I think it's been unfairly punished by a CDC that seems more intent on scaring the public out of getting a vaccination than actually getting people vaccinated with some safety. I bet J&J has a fantastic quarter and reveals an even better pipeline. But Procter & Gamble, the street's actually worried about this one. First, there are tough comparisons versus the stay-at-home numbers they were putting up a year ago. Second, they're coping with real inflation from plastics, surfactants, freight, and that's putting pressure on their margins. I don't think they can pass on the entirety of those costs to the consumer. Too much competition. Now, after the close, Netflix reports. This should be fun. Netflix typically beats the numbers, and the principals always seem to have a great time talking about their business. They love what they do and don't take themselves too seriously. I find myself taking as many notes about what series to watch as what numbers they're going to put up. What can I say? Even the Netflix conference call has good content. Wednesday, we hear from Verizon. Will this stock ever move again, or is it just epoxied to the high 50s? I'm beginning to believe it's stuck there, making it feel like more of a bond than a stock. I wonder if CEO Hans Vestberg will be feeling any heat, especially given all the money he'll have to spend on towers after the recent Spectrum auction. I'm expecting nothing new here. If you got to own a phone company, I have to tell you, I prefer T-Mobile. After the close, we get results from what I bet will be the two of the week's best performers, Lam Research, LRCX, and Chipotle. Lam is the answer to the semiconductor shortage. They make the equipment needed to manufacture new chips. The whole semiconductor capital equipment industry is they simply can't handle all the business. They're not able to. When you hear Taiwan Semi endlessly talking about raising its capital equipment budget, that means that Lam is going to make a fortune. To think that they put millions of shares back at dramatically lower prices, smart management, great execution. Fantastic group of guys. As for Chipotle, its stock has been hanging around near its all-time highs for a little while now, biding its time, I think, for the big breakout, and I think you're going to see that next week when management talks about the pickup in business that's happening thanks to the great reopening. I'm betting this paragon of great natural food and phenomenal customer service will blow the doors off the quarter, triggering another round of price target boosts as the analysts desperately try to play catch-up to the stock price. Thursday's got so much happening that I can't really do it justice, but we're going to start with Union Pacific. Oh, my. Well, look, I'm at home. I can't tell it very easily. I'm not going to press the train wreck button. I'm looking for the all-board button, but that's not here. That's okay. Anyway, you look like the magic. Is this magic? See where I am, really? All right, anyway. I think Union Pacific is going to tell us a story of making more with less, meaning efficiency galore. Then there's Dow Chemical. If PPG's any guide from last night, it should put up some amazing numbers, allowing the stock to break out to the 70s. And that's a huge gain from where it was trading when CEO Jim Fitterling came on the show after he bought a boatload of stock in the 20s. We also hear from Danaher, and I can't wait to see how well they're doing. This company's got tremendous high-growth healthcare business, part of which they picked up from GE for a song. I expect a fantastic quarter. How about Nucor, best-of-breed steelmaker? We're in an inflationary year where it's transitory or whether it's not. So Nucor should put up some incredible numbers. That's no surprise if you're paying attention when they came on the show not that long ago. But I think we're going to hear about a return to the halcyon era of steelmaking in this country. After the close, we get results from the newly controversial Intel, now led by the terrific Pat Gelsinger, who's become an evangelist for a company that certainly needed one. I think Pat's doing a terrific job inspiring people both inside and outside the great institution. If the stock gets hit, I'd be a buyer. Gelsinger can't turn the Intel battleship on a dime, but it will be turned. How many companies can make a spiked seltzer before it actually hurts Boston Beer's Truly brand? We heard from Constellation 2 weeks ago with its Corona seltzer. I think the shorts will be leaning against Boston Beer, as they always do, because of the competition. My view, the category is growing so rapidly the parent Sam Adams should do just fine, thank you. Friday morning, we hear from two companies with fantastic stories to tell, Honeywell, HON, and Mercury Express, AXP. Now, the former really should be biding its time, waiting for aerospace orders, but that's not how CEO Darius Adamczyk does business. Honeywell's becoming a software as a building service play, not to mention an incredible healthcare company. I think the numbers can go higher still. As for Mercury Express, it's all about gauging the power of the great reopening. With its combination of small business, remember they offer credit, travel and entertainment lines, we should be able to get a good read on the strength of the recovery going forward. It's going to be a fantastic barometer. Finally, also on Friday, the CEO of Bristol Myers, Dr. Giovanni Cavario. Well, he's going to take the stage to explain what his company's got going for it. I think the world of both Cavario and Bristol Myers. But can the stock break away from the pack? Not clear. Maybe we'll hear how much money these guys have really made from the Celgene acquisition, and then maybe we got some justification for the MyoKardia purchase. That could be big. Here's the bottom line. Next week marks the beginning of the real earnings season, not the bank earnings season. It's very boring. And we're actually going to get the impact of both inflation and the reopening. I think the former's a big negative, but the latter's so positive that the ball can stay in the air, ready for a beautiful stuff over the net and to the floor. I say we take calls. I say we go to Gregory in California. Gregory.
Hi, Jim. As a COVID survivor and J&J vaccine recipient, I just want to say how grateful I am to you for your honesty regarding the CDC and how ludicrous their behavior is. Because frankly, it's left me feeling a little bit unvaccinated.
They've done, frankly, their narrative that they've created is disgraceful. It's disgraceful. But go ahead. How can I help?
So 3 months ago, this company IPO'd at $49 and doubled on its debut. Today, it's trading somewhere in the high 60s. You know, they did a similar deal with Shopify that PayPal did with eBay way back in the day. This company has an exclusive point-of-sale rights for ShopPay, Shopify's checkout service. They also have a similar deal with Walmart. They're growing at 45% year over year with 75% gross margins. I'm not looking for a double like in the next quarter or anything, but over the next year or two, am I wrong thinking firmly that a firm is a fist-pounding buy?
Oh, booyah, that's a good way to put it. Look, I think the world of Max Levchin was on this week on Tech Check, which is the new show that I think is fantastic. Here's the issue. There's the competition out of nowhere. I mean, there's just competition out of literally nowhere. I think a firm's going to hold its own, and I exactly why you like it, I like it, which is they made a deal with Shopify, and Shopify wouldn't just make a deal with anyone. I think you're fine, but it's not going to roar. Too much competition. All right, earnings season is shifting into high gear next week, and that's when we'll learn about the real impact of inflation, but also the real positive, the great reopening. Oh, man, money tonight. Could Chamath-backed insurance disruptor called Metro Mile be worth considering here? I think you got to find out about this one. I'm going to take a close look. Then, the most controversial of all, QuantumScape stock dropped more than 12% yesterday after short seller Scorpion Capital published a report questioning the company's battery performance claims and pretty much called it the next Theranos. I'm giving CEO Jagdeep Singh the floor. Tell his side of the story. And it's one of the tech sector's newest unicorns. Has private player The Zebra earned its stripes? I've got the exclusive. So stay with
Cramer.
Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow @JimCramer on Twitter. Have a question? Tweet Kramer. #MadTweets. Send Jim an email to madmoney@cnbc.com or give us a call at 1-800-743-CNBC. Miss something? Head to madmoney.cnbc.com. Get an edge. Invest like a pro. Access CNBC's live streams around the globe. Unparalleled access to CNBC experts. Actionable investor insight and ideas. Start your free trial today at cnbc.com/pro.
Our retirement plan with Voya keeps us moving forward.
Hey, Kevin. Hey, guys. They have customized solutions to help our family's special needs, giving us confidence in our future.
And in Kevin's.
Voya. Well planned, well invested, well protected.
This is what it feels like wearing regular shoes. No all-around support. And this is what it's like wearing Skechers Arch Fit footwear. It's all the comfort and support you need. We're almost done here, Brooke. It's good to have support. Try Skechers Arch Fit footwear with podiatrist-certified arch support.
With a bang, energy and change came to every part of our universe. Seismic or small, it continues.
Change is all around us. Shaped by technology and human ingenuity. We can make it work for you and your business.
Did you know that Petco is now a health and wellness company?
Their groomers work wonders for my confidence.
I trust their vets, and I'm known to have trust issues.
They deliver high-quality food the same day.
I was outside digging. What'd I miss? Just everything regarding our physical, social, and mental health.
Exciting. I'm gonna take a spin around the room.
Great idea.
Petco, the health and wellness company.
This is Peacock.
Describe it, please.
It's streaming.
It's for free.
It's new shows. It's your favorite shows.
I have goosebumps.
It's movies.
Bring it.
Live sports, live events, and exclusive originals.
Yes.
It's Minions, Maguire, and much, much more.
The best thing that's ever happened.
Watch for free, upgrade for more.
As a young man, my hair started to thin. I couldn't sleep, I was stressed about it, and there were few options out there. Nutrafol is a drug-free, natural supplement that gave me my hair, my health, and my confidence back. Get growing at Nutrafol.com.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful, so we set out to create a better home selling experience with a network of the most successful real estate agents in America that'll sell your home for as little as a 2% commission.
The icing on the cake with the Ideal Agent was that we saved $12,000 in commission.
They were so stress-free. The whole process was amazing, and I would definitely recommend them.
We are not a discount brokerage. These are top local agents that'll get you the best results.
In the past 2 months, the entire SPAC complex has been laid to waste, which is why I spent so much time warning you to stay away from these things. But now many of them have come down to levels where, you know what? We got to take a hard look at them. Which brings me to Metro Mile, a company that's trying to disrupt the auto insurance industry that we all kind of aren't fans of, frankly. The model. Metro Mile offers personalized insurance for low-mileage drivers, a group that now contains 2/3 of the drivers in the United States. And I bet that number's going higher thanks to the rise of remote work. If you don't drive much, you're probably getting ripped off by your insurance company. You don't even know it. And that's where Metro Mile comes in, with policies where you can pay by the mile. They say their average customer saves 47% versus what they were paying before. Well, this thing's got some high-profile backers, including Mark Cuban and Chamath Palihapitiya, who's involved with a lot of these. He's from Social Capital. But after surging to $20 a couple of months ago, the stock's plummeted to just under $8 as of today. You're now getting a 20% discount to where the SPAC backers got into Metro Mile. That's very unusual. So could the stock be enticing at these levels? Let's check in with Dan Preston. He's the CEO of Metro Mile to get a better sense of his business and prospects. Mr. Preston, welcome to Mad Money.
Hey, great to be here, Jim. Thanks.
All right, so Dan, I don't drive a lot. I did when my kids were younger, and my car's mostly in my garage. But I haven't changed. I pay the same rate as I always have. How can Metro Mile help me?
Yeah, you're a perfect example. So Metro Mile, we're digital insurer, and as you said, we're offering insurance that's tailored to you as the individual. So instead of that flat rate that you pay, we only charge you for the actual miles that you drive. So people on average who drive less than the average, which is 2/3 of drivers, end up saving about 47%. And basically, you just sign up at metromile.com. You get a monthly fixed cost, which is a really small part of your premium that you pay, and then cents per mile. And then we connect to your car either through a device or directly with the vehicle. And then you only pay every month for your actual miles driven. And so in effect, that means that most people who drive less than the average, and especially in your case where now you don't drive, would end up saving a lot in their insurance relative to the standard fixed rate insurance.
Well, okay, I see car companies spend, the auto insurers for cars, spend a fortune advertising, and they all kind of compete against each other, really on name brand, not that much on price. I look at your growth, which is right now not as much as I'd like to see from a company, but I believe that if everybody knew about your company, there are many people who would switch. So how are you going to get the word out? Because I think a lot of people are paying too much for their car insurance.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So it's interesting. The way that you traditionally have to sell insurance is that because they're all the products are largely the same, it's largely commoditized, you put your brand out there. You make sure that you're top of mind for everyone so that when they decide to switch insurance, you are one of the 2 or 3 companies that you go and look at. What's really unique about Metro Mile and Per Mile Insurance is that there is a reason for you as a customer to believe that by switching today, you will actually save, right? The way you live your life by being a low miles driver means that you will save. You don't have to wait until someone decides to switch insurance. And so we have been getting the word out through the product experience itself and through a number of digital channels to be able to connect the idea of how you live your life, whether you're working from home, you take public transit, you're recently retired, whatever it is about your life that leads you to being a low miles driver, and then connecting that idea with those savings. And what's really exciting is that once someone becomes a customer, we found that people are really excited about sharing that then with people around them, their friends and family who also drive less. And part of what drives that experience is that people join initially because they save, but they end up actually saving for more than just their initial per mile savings. So we, for instance, offer a fully automated, seamless digital claims experience. Normally you have to sit on the phone and explain what happened at the time of the claim. You can just enter this into your phone and be on your way. And what's exciting about this is not only is it easier for the customer, it actually means that our costs are lower, and that leads to lower prices for our consumers. But we also help people avoid parking tickets and diagnose car issues. And that customer experience that comes afterwards has proven to be one of the most valuable assets that we have as a company, because then your marketing becomes less about just putting the word out there or getting your brand out there. It becomes a lot more about what is the real value that we can bring to our customers. And Metro Mile's product, in addition to being
Well, let me ask you again. When I look at that, and it does sound like a terrific proposition, we were looking at your documents and said 1-year new customer retention rate as of year 2020 was 69.4%. Is that, to us, after listening to your proposition, that seems low. Or in your industry, is that extraordinarily high?
Yeah, in the industry, it's actually quite strong. So what you typically find for large insurance companies that have been around for a long time is that they'll retain somewhere between 80 to 90% of the customers that they already have on board, right? But that is actually looking at all of their customers, even the ones that have been with them for 10, 15 years. Because we're a younger company, we're sharing what is the retention rate after you first join. When you look at our customers who have been with us for 2 or 3 years, their retention rate actually is also in the mid-80s. And so if you look at our numbers, our average lifetime of a customer is about 3.5 years. It's actually comparably better than most insurers.
So, people can go to what site? What do they do if they've listened to what you're saying? Obviously, many of them may be paying too much. What do they do?
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. Just go to metromile.com. You enter in some basic information, and then really quickly, you can get your monthly fixed cost plus your per mile rate. What you'll find is that your monthly fixed cost is typically about 30%, of what you normally pay, and the rest is all mileage. So if you drive less than 1,000 miles a month, you typically save with Metro Mile. The other way you can find out about us is downloading the app. And with that, we'll actually give you like a little trial period, which we call ride along, and we'll help you estimate actually how much you'll save by using the sensors on the phone.
Well, look, I'm going to do it this weekend. I'm obviously paying too much. Didn't know about this service. I'm not endorsing you. I'm just saying, well, I found this intriguing when I was doing the homework, and I wanted to know from my assistant why I'm not using it. I've already sent the email. Well, look, Dan, it was great to have you on the show. I think you've got a great concept here. Don't understand why the stock's so low given the concept. That's Dan Preston. He's the CEO of Metro Miles. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Mad Money's back after the break.
One EV company is facing intense backlash after the release of a condemning report. The CEO of QuantumScape is firing back and responding to the allegations.
Next, 8 dead in a mass shooting. What witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith. Next, CNBC.
On Tech Check, Sonos CEO Patrick Spence on the rise of social audio, plus a preview of the week's big tech earnings, Netflix, IBM, and Intel. Tech Check, 11 Eastern. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
They're out there, working day and night to breach your data and take what's yours. Ransomware, botnets, zero-day attacks. It's kind of scary if you think about it. Or you could not think about it at all. This is autonomous cybersecurity. This is Sentinel-1.
Nobody dreams in conventional thinking. It didn't get us to the moon. It doesn't ring the bell on Wall Street or disrupt the status quo. T-Mobile for Business uses unconventional thinking to help you realize new possibilities, like our new Work From Anywhere solutions, so your teams can collaborate almost anywhere, plus customer experience that finds solutions in the moment, and first-class benefits like 5G with every plan. Network, support, and value without any trade-offs. That's T-Mobile for Business.
Did you know that Petco is now a health and wellness company?
Their groomers work wonders for my confidence.
I trust their vets, and I'm known to have trust issues.
They deliver high-quality food the same day.
I was outside digging. What'd I miss?
Just everything regarding our physical, social, and mental health.
Exciting. I'm gonna take a spin around the room.
Great idea.
Petco, the health and wellness company.
Re-entering data that employees could enter themselves? That's why I get up in the morning.
I have a secret method for remembering all my HR passwords.
My boss doesn't remember approving my time off. Let's just find that email.
The old way of doing business slows everyone down. With Paycom, employees enter and manage their own HR data in one easy-to-use software. Visit paycom.com for a free demo.
We are on a mission to make the United States of America the safest country in the world. It is an audacious goal. But since when in our country do we shy away from what is hard, what is difficult, and what is impossible? We are Americans. The world is going to change more in the next 10 years than the last 100 years combined. Because we, together, are going to change it.
I keep telling you how these electric vehicle SPAC names are finally facing intense scrutiny from aggressive short sellers. And in many cases, they deserve it. Yesterday, though, it happened at QuantumScape. That's a company that's developing a better electric vehicle battery. And to my mind, I don't know, I've had them on several times. They're one of the most legitimate players in the space. Now, though, a short-selling outfit, very smart guys called Scorpion Capital, has published what I regard as pretty incendiary, a 188-page report that accuses QuantumScape of being, in their words, a pump-and-dump SPAC scam, one that's in the fraud pantheon with Theranos. Now, on the surface, some of this stuff seems pretty damning, though not a single one of the sources are named. A lot of it's based on the intricacies of battery physics, and frankly, that is beyond me. However, after taking most of the yesterday to review the report, QuantumScape has come out swinging. Management says they stand by all their published data. They point out that they've been the most transparent of solid-state battery developers. And this morning, the CEO and the CTO joined analysts from Morgan Stanley in a webcast to respond at length by their own desire to in great detail. Last night, I extended a public invitation for them to do the same here, and they took me up immediately. So let's see if we can get to the bottom of what's going on here with Jagdeep Singh, the co-founder, chairman, CEO of QuantumScape. And by the way, the short seller was on Melissa's show yesterday. I think that's important to point out on Fast Money. So, Mr. Singh, welcome back to Mad Money.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here, as always.
Thank you, Jagdeep. Okay, first, I just want to set the stage here. You have a technology that you've always been transparent on. Wall Street, actual shareholders have hyped it to the point where I think that it's a little bit at odds with what you've always said on the show, which is it's new technology and you hope it works out. Is there a dichotomy here between what you've been saying and some of the over-enthusiastic people who may have taken it too high?
Well, I think we've been always pretty transparent about what we have and the work that remains to be done. I think we've made clear on one hand that we believe, addressed one of the fundamental issues that have held back solid-state batteries over the last several decades, which is, of course, a working solid-state separator. That's the heart of a solid-state battery. And that's a pretty substantial breakthrough. And if you talk to the experts, they will recognize that. On the other hand, we've also made clear that we're not done yet. We have to take the solid-state separator. We've shown that it works in single-layer cells. We've also shown that we can make 4-layer cells out of it. But we now need to stack it up to make multiple dozens of layers. And then we need to ramp up production. And production ramping up, obviously, is not trivial. It's not physics, but it requires a lot of execution capability. So those are tasks that lie ahead of us, and we've been very transparent about that. To your opening points about transparency, that's one of the things, frankly, that we pride ourselves on. We think we've been the most transparent of any solid-state battery company. We put out data that has all the parameters listed on our data slides, and yeah, hopefully we've tried to portray a really accurate sense of both the opportunity ahead of us as well as the tasks that remain to be done.
Okay, well, I know I've had you on several times, and one of the reasons is because of your relationship with Volkswagen, and you got you just made another milestone that got you a second $100 million, but also because, for instance, recently, yesterday, you added Selena, excuse my pronunciation, if I get a pronunciation here, Miko Lajak. And Selena is the #2 person at Panasonic Gigafactory in Nevada, and to me knows more about battery technology than almost anyone in the world. I have to believe that both VW and your new board member, Selena, took a lot of time and made judgments and didn't need to be invested or join the board.
100%. I mean, Selena is one of the world experts in not only battery technology, but battery manufacturing. And if you were to get a tour of the Gigafactory, you would get an amazing sense of just how deep she is. And even though she's on our board, we fully intend to leverage her with our execution team on the manufacturing front. So that is absolutely, in our view, a great vote of confidence when somebody with that depth of knowledge agrees to serve on the board. Obviously, JB Swabo is already on the board, another world-class battery and manufacturing expert. We have some great, obviously, venture capitalists who've done a lot of technology plays over the years. So I think there's a lot of people that have looked pretty deeply at what we have, and we're pretty confident that the numbers that we have are pretty groundbreaking.
Okay, so our viewers are obviously not institutions, and they're people who are afraid. They're afraid that they've lost a lot of money on SPACs, and one of them asked me to say, could you please ask Jagdeep, is there another lockup coming that might be expiring before they decided, you know what, the stock's been knocked down by short sellers, this is an opportunity? I think that's a legitimate question to ask. Is there a lockup expiration coming?
Well, we've been very clear in all of our SEC filings what the various lockups are. I mean, there are, like any public offering, there are various lockups that expire. I believe there's one coming up towards the end of May. But I think if you look at the core team here, these are people that they've been here for 10 years, and they're on a mission. The mission is more than just creating economic value. That's obviously fantastic. But along with that, we also want to make an impact on emissions, on the climate. And I think these are not people that are here just to flip the stock, which, by the way, is more than I can say about a typical short seller. As you know, short sellers, the strategy is short the stock and then try to publish a report to get the stock to drop, because and then they cover their stock and they're out of there. So I think you're looking at a very long-term committed team that has demonstrated its commitment.
Well, also, the Volkswagen deal, I mean, Volkswagen gave you that second $100 million. Obviously, they didn't have to do that if they felt that you didn't meet the milestones. But at the same time, what do they get for their $100 million?
Well, so they committed last year to make a $200 million investment, and the first $100 million of that had no closing conditions other than time. So that round closed in December. The second $100 million was tied to this milestone, and the milestone, again, was defined up front by them. It was a specific set of dimensions of our cell, a specific rate of power that it was tested at, a specific temperature, and a specific cycle life, all done in their labs. And so, we provided the cells to them. We shipped them to Germany. They tested them. The cells, worked successfully, and as a result, they went forward with the $100 million.
Now, you still, even though this is early technology, your projections are pretty aggressive. Do you feel good about the projections of how much money you can make it, say, out 4 or 5 years as this process goes along? Because as it is early stage technology, everybody wants it. I mean, the world wants this battery. It's faster. It's cheaper. It is going to be much cleaner. But it does seem like that the amount of money that you're going to make, that you say you can make, is, let's say, possibly that you might not be able to generate it that quickly.
Well, here's what we know. I mean, we know that the demand for batteries right now is near infinite from the standpoint of our ability to produce batteries, not only now, but even in the intermediate term. There's just everybody out there wants batteries. We also know that everybody needs a better battery. And you just pointed out the idea of a battery that has 50 to 80% greater energy density, which means greater range, can be fast charged, is safer, it's lower cost, it has longer life. Those are all attributes that apply to every application for batteries. So if you could actually build that battery at scale, absolutely, we would expect the demand for that to be very dramatic. So the question really then becomes, can we in fact get this battery into production, and how quickly can we ramp up that production? And I think the key things to note there are, one is, the core science of does the technology work? That we've demonstrated not only in our labs, but in multiple automotive OEM customer labs. They've done the testing, and they've actually seen the same results that we've published. And secondly, relative to scaling up production, not only do we have people like J.B. Straubel and now Selena Mikolajczak on the board helping us do that, but we have VW, one of the world's largest manufacturing companies, clearly one of the top 3 OEMs in the world, doing a joint venture with us. So it's not just a little startup out of California. It's a technology company out of California coupled with a manufacturing giant that has to scale this up. And when you couple that with the expertise that what Panasonic's director brings, that's a really good combination.
Okay. Now, it's 188 pages. It's pretty savage. I didn't go into the charges of fraud or the Theranos, but let me ask you something. 20 years ago, someone wrote a whole book about me, and the book was filled with lies. And I sued him. I went to court. I got the book pulped. No one saw it because it was filled with lies. If you think this is filled with lies, why wouldn't you do the same thing I did?
Well, we're absolutely going to look at that. I mean, the reality is some of those points, I don't want to get into point, but some of the points in there are just absurd to the point where they're in fact, things that we want to take legal action on. So we're going to look into that and based on the advice that we get, pursue that. But at the end of the day, our business is to build a better battery. And really, deliver this to our customers who are asking for it. So we don't want to get too distracted either. But we feel pretty good about where we are. As I said, we've been very transparent about the data. We've shared incredible detail about our numbers. In fact, that whole report wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for our numbers. They did no original research of their own. They just took our slides and just kind of regurgitated them. So I just don't think there's really any merit to these kind of things. And the agenda is clearly clear to drive the stock price down so they can profit.
Understood. All right. Well, look, Jagdeep, I'm glad you came on the show. I'm glad we asked you to come on. You said absolutely yes. Morgan Stanley, boom. You wanted to go in front of them. Adam Jonas, yes. Don't know what more you can ask for. That's Jagdeep Singh, co-founder, chairman, and CEO of QuantumScape. Thank you, Jagdeep. It is great to see you on the show.
Always a pleasure.
Stick with Chris.
Coming up, is the insurance game ready to change its stripes? Kramer goes off the tape with a company that wants to put the customer in control. Next.
The COVID vaccines are here.
And it's been a little confusing.
So it's more important than ever to make a plan. Visit planyourvaccine.com.
To find out when and where to get your vaccine, so you'll be ready when it's your turn.
Millions are saying yes to Allegra, the #1 allergist-recommended non-drowsy brand. Allegra works 2 times faster than Claritin, and unlike Zyrtec, it's non-drowsy. Say yes to the fastest non-drowsy 24-hour relief. Allegra.
I've spent my career helping others make their dream homes reality, but I'm not an expert at creating my own financial plan. That's why I have an advisor from Ameriprise. His advice helps me envision my future and build it. Ameriprise Financial.
When it comes to autism, finding the right words can be tough. Finding understanding doesn't have to be. Together, we can create a kinder, more inclusive world for the millions of people on the autism spectrum. Go to autismspeaks.org.
I really hope that this vaccine can get me one step closer to him.
To our huge wedding. To give high fives to our patients.
To hug my students.
With every vaccine, CVS is working to bring you one step closer to a better tomorrow.
For asthma, there's Primatene Mist. When symptoms strike, your airways narrow and there's less breathing room. Primatene Mist is clinically shown to open airways quickly. Get the #1 FDA-approved over-the-counter asthma inhaler and breathe easy again.
Did you know that Petco is now a health and wellness company?
Their groomers work wonders for my confidence.
I trust their vets, and I'm known to have trust issues.
They deliver high-quality food the same day.
I was outside digging. What'd I miss?
Just everything regarding our physical, social, and mental health.
Exciting. I'm gonna take a spin around the room.
Great idea.
Petco, the health and wellness company.
For skin that never holds you back, don't settle for silver. #1 for diabetic dry skin. #1 for psoriasis symptom relief. And #1 for eczema symptom relief. Gold Bond, championing your skin.
Looking to refinance your mortgage? The first thing you want to do, find out how much your home is worth.
Just go to ownerly.com, enter the address, and see the home value. Come to ownerly.com and see what your home is worth for free.
Got a to-do list that just goes on and on and on? Download Thumbtack. It's the app that finds you local pros for any home project, like people to fix the plumbing, or freshen up old paint, or help you deal with all those boxes. Thumbtack instantly finds local pros for you. It shows you prices and reviews so you can hire exactly who you need. Download the app and start your next project today. Thumbtack.
Every once in a while, the doorbell rings and I get a little surprise. With over 200 wines, that little surprise could be any one of 82 million combinations. I can decide when I get my box and how often. It's super flexible and my satisfaction is guaranteed.
You know us. We're always on the lookout for the next big thing in any given industry, and that means checking in on, sometimes, on the smaller, privately held companies, meaning you can't trade the stock, that are shaking things up. Take The Zebra, okay, you got to use the item to get the site, which runs an independent comparison site for home and auto insurance, lots of different things, boat insurance too. It has raised $150 million in a fundraising round, values the company at over $1 billion. That means that Zebra's now a unicorn. I think it's got an intriguing concept, making it easy to comparison shop for insurance. They're taking a process that's notoriously opaque, as you probably know, trying to make it transparent. Could this be the future of the industry? Let's take a closer look with Keith Melnick. Now, Keith is the CEO of Zebra. We got to learn more about this company. Mr. Melnick, welcome to Mad Money.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, Keith, you were at Kayak, where I used to get good prices for travel. Can you tell me how similar these are, and why did you leave Kayak for the Zebra?
Well, I mean, conceptually, there's some huge similarities. There are surprising similarities between travel and insurance, but it's still the same consumer problem, trying to make it easier for consumers to compare what can be harder things to compare and find the right product for them at the right price. And I really switched. I joined Kayak when there were 8 of us, so saw it through from a startup to taking it public to being bought by Priceline. And I knew I kind of had one more shot in me and had the opportunity to go to the Zebra, which was about 50 people, looked at the problem they were trying to solve in the market and noticed some wonderful similarities where it was a giant market. Auto insurance in particular is a huge market, very fragmented, more fragmented than I thought. I don't think it surprises people. There's a lot of consumer dissatisfaction in the shopping process. And what really surprised me was there was nobody doing a good job in terms of making it easier for consumers to compare and shop for insurance. So that's why when some investors decided they wanted to invest and asked me to come along, I definitely decided it was worth the effort.
All right, so well, Keith, let's. I mean, here's what I wonder. But sometimes I Google cheapest auto insurance. That's kind of how I do things. I mean, is that not the correct way to go about things?
I mean, it's going to be time consuming, and well, there's a couple things that could happen. You could wind up bouncing around from insurance supplier site to insurance supplier site, and it's going to take you a lot of time because you're going to have to enter your information on all of them. And you get one result back based on what that carrier has. Or even worse, you could wind up going to a lot of lead gen sites that are out there today, which is nothing more really than arbitrage. They buy you once, they sell you off 5 or 6 times. You probably get a lot of phone calls. So it's not the best way to do it. What we really do is we'll get your information. We'll get the rates back from our different insurance partners. We use some algorithms to show you the best results, and then we'll help you find out what you want and either send you off to the insurance carrier site to buy it, or we'll help you buy it ourselves. So we just try to make the thing so much easier for you to find what you're looking for.
And if someone does take a policy, the insurer pays you a percentage in order so that you get compensated somehow?
Well, we will get paid either just a flat rate for them buying a policy, or if we bind it ourselves, we get a commission for it. But it's nice because we're incentivized. I mean, a consumer who's shopping for insurance, they primarily want to find the right policy for them. The insurance carrier wants to sell them a policy, so we're all incentivized the same way. I'm not trying to do anything to a consumer that doesn't make sense for them.
And then one more thing. What is the mode here, Keith? I mean, look, you can say the mode is Keith because he did Kayak, but I wonder whether other people say, they watch the show and say, you know what? I'm going to get some money. I'm going to do the Zebra, the Zebra with stripes, whatever. How do we keep it so that other companies doesn't do the same thing you do?
I mean, the nice thing is this is not an easy thing to do. When we started Kayak, it was so long ago. It was before the iPhone. So it was a long time ago, and we really revolutionized the UI, or engineers did. They were amazing at that. But there was a lot of underlying technology that could give us the different rates for flights and hotels. That really doesn't exist in insurance. So the fact that we can pull in prices from so many different insurance carriers, that's not easy to do. Be really difficult for somebody to come into the market to do that. And scale matters in this market too. So the fact that we've built scale, we actually can be meaningful to insurance carriers, build some trust with consumers. I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to do is become an advisor for consumers and help them find what the best insurance policy is for them. And that means you have to have the right content. And so we've built this relationship with hundreds of carriers. You have to be able to give them good advice, and you have to be trustworthy. So it takes a long time to get there.
I can see that. I can see that. And look, obviously anything that saves money, we are in favor of on Mad Money. Keith Melnick, CEO of the Zebra, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Mad Money's back after the break.
Coming up next.
Let's make money together. What do we got?
Kramer's bringing the thunder and answering your burning questions in today's edition of The Lightning Round.
Next, 8 dead in a mass shooting, what witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith. Next, CNBC.
You could try to predict the future, or you can create it.
We're driving it
Everywhere.
We emit optimism, not exhaust.
We plug in our vehicles as naturally as we charge our phone.
We
are Generation E.
We want smart,
Clean, and safe. To also be fun, easy, and powerful. A battery that charges fast.
runs long. It fits everyone.
Nobody will be left out.
And that changes everything.
The future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air.
Millions are saying yes to Allegra, the #1 allergist-recommended non-drowsy brand. Allegra works 2 times faster than Claritin, and unlike Zyrtec, it's non-drowsy. Say yes to Allegra. And for congestion relief, find Allegra D behind the pharmacy counter.
Today, you are going to become a cook. So how do we do it? Let's just follow the directions. It's like a life hack. I can't believe we made it. It's really good.
Go to HelloFresh.com and use code TV12 for up to 12 free meals.
Did you know that Petco is now a health and wellness company?
Their groomers work wonders for my confidence.
I trust their vets, and I'm known to have trust issues.
They deliver high-quality food the same day.
I was outside digging. What'd I miss?
Just everything regarding our physical, social, and mental health.
Exciting. I'm gonna take a spin around the room.
Great idea.
Petco, the health and wellness company.
A global battery arms race is underway. Are essential to our energy future, with demand projected to grow as much as 400%. A U.S.-based raw material supply chain is now a national priority. Standard Lithium is ready to lead. With our advanced direct lithium extraction technology, fast, sustainable, modern lithium production is here. Standard Lithium, America's 21st century lithium company.
Lightning Round is sponsored by TD Ameritrade.
Wait a second. Before we begin tonight's lightning round, I want to congratulate our show's director, Alan Babbitt, who is retiring from CNBC after an incredible 28 years at the network. Alan has done a wonderful job behind the scenes, making sure Mad Money never misses a beat. Even when COVID presented new production challenges, Alan rose to the occasion. I, along with the entire Mad Money staff, will miss you, and we thank you for your dedication. And now, it is time for the lightning round. Of course, everybody wants to talk about Rob Farquhar's one, and I've seen you say the bye-bye, so you don't play the sound. And then the lightning round is over. Are you ready, Ski Dad? Tell me the lightning round, because let's start with Jason in New York. Jason!
How you doing, Jim?
Jason. Couldn't be better. How about you?
About lithium motors. Good. My question
Oh, man, I like lithium. Of course, I like Lithia. I call it Lottie. Why? Because that's where my daughter lived, in Lithia, right next to the Lithia Park, and that is exactly where the company's located. And, man, is it ever smoking good? I'd buy it right here. How about we go to John in New Jersey. John.
What's up?
Johnny. I don't know. You tell me.
So I have a question.
Going on?
I've been looking at WWE stock for a while. They just signed a 5-year deal, which will bring in the company $200 million per year from Peacock, NBC Universal. Today it closed out about $56. Do you think it's worth a buy?
Yes, I do. It's a very smart, well-run company, and Strauss Zelnick says the same thing from Take-Two, which, by the way, stock was down very badly. I don't know why. So I think you're in good hands. Let's go to Corey in Illinois. Corey.
Hey, Jim. This is Corey here from Chicago. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you? Booyah.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Been a big fan of your show. Been watching for over 11 years now. So just wanted to say thanks for all your great wisdom and entertainment over the years.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, today I wanted to
stock too. You
ask
probably
you
have a
about
stock.
the company. Yes, I do have a stock. I was wondering about IIPR. They're a
It's a cannabis warehouse company. It's one of the safest way to invest in cannabis. I am a big believer. I think you got horse sense with that one. Let's go to, Chance in Texas. Chance. Oh, come on. Let Chance speak. Shut up. Chance.
Yes, sir. Booyah! From San Antonio, Texas. This is Chance. I've been watching you for a few weeks, and I love it. I want to see what you thought about Fiverr International and its competition, Upstart.
Well, look, Fiverr is a company that we've profiled. We think it's a very good company. It's a freelance. It's weird. It's got like this kind of cool freelance model, and I'm a giant believer in it. But the stock is among the most expensive companies we follow, but it keeps getting it right. And I'm going to give you a 2-point. I think Wix is the same. I like that one too. All right, let's go to Mike in Pennsylvania. Mike.
Jim Cramer. Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Of course.
Hey, Jim, at 120, you said it's going much higher. Now, my stock is trading at $104. What do you think of UPST?
Well, remember, I also liked it when it was, about 70. I mean, here's the problem with this company. It is hugely shorted. 20% of it is shorted, and guys try to knock it down all the time. I think it's a very good AI credit company, but apparently people feel that Dave doesn't have anything special. Dave Jordan, I actually think he does. I think it's a good situation. So I'm not backing away. Down 5 today. Let's take one more. Let's go to Jason in Alabama. Jason.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
All right, real quick, my stock today is United Natural Foods, symbol UNFI.
This company's made a major comeback. You know what? It was really a bow wow, and now it's done well, but it's up 125%. I suggest you wait till it cools off before you buy anymore. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of the Lightning Round.
The Lightning Round is sponsored by TD Ameritrade. Coming up, will a looming geopolitical challenge become a threat to your portfolio? Cramer takes on the China conundrum. Next.
I have an idea for a trade.
Oh, yeah? You gonna place it?
Not until I'm sure.
Why don't you call TD Ameritrade for a strategy gut check?
What's that?
You run it by an expert, you talk about the risk and potential profit and loss.
Could have used that before I hired my interior decorator.
Voila.
Maybe a couple of throw pillows would help.
Get a strategy gut check from our trade desk.
We are on a mission to make the United States of America the safest country in the world. It is an audacious goal. But since when in our country do we shy away from what is hard, what is difficult, and what is impossible? We are Americans. The world is going to change more in the next 10 years than the last 100 years combined. Because we, together, are going to change it.
The future of fitness isn't dumbbells. It's revolutionary digital weight that learns as you get stronger. So you can be your strongest. Tonal, now at 40 Nordstrom locations nationwide.
Selling a home is expensive and stressful, so we set out to create a better home selling experience with a network of the most successful real estate agents in America that'll sell your home for as little as a 2% commission.
The icing on the cake with the Ideal Agent was that we saved $12,000 in commission.
They were so stress-free, the whole process was amazing, and I would definitely recommend them.
We are not a discount brokerage. These are top local agents that'll get you the best results.
I've never gone this fast before. I can't believe what I'm experiencing.
Knowing how competitive he is, and that's why he's so good. Amongst the fire, he has this calm.
This was my dream.
Coming up, 8 dead in a mass shooting, what witnesses say happened. Plus, on the ground with vaccine strike teams, how they're trying to battle hesitancy. The news, minutes away.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith. Next, CNBC.
Is China making any effort to fix its deteriorating relationship with Washington? When Biden was elected, the business community hoped that the situation would cool down and we get more access to the now booming Chinese economy, which, as we learned just last night, grew at an 18% clip in the first quarter. It would have been easy, very easy to calm everything down, frankly. Now, remember, 2.5 years ago, Vice President Mike Pence gave a big speech at the Hudson Institute where he basically laid out the strategy for a new Cold War, only with China filling the role of the defunct Soviet Union. Pence accused the Chinese government of everything from meddling in American elections to imprisoning and torturing 1 million of its own Muslim citizens, while also cracking down on Tibetan Buddhists, leading 150 monks to literally set themselves on fire. Like the old USSR, Pence accused China of harboring imperial ambitions, using its wealth and power to co-opt nations all over the globe through its Belt and Road Initiative. But the big flashpoint has always been Taiwan. For many years, Taiwan claimed to be the legitimate government of China. It's where the nationalists set up shop after they lost the Civil War to the communists, while China has never stopped claiming that it owns Taiwan. Ever since Nixon agreed to recognize the People's Republic, we've been walking a tightrope there, protecting Taiwan's autonomy without pushing for its full independence. China wants complete reunification. But with Taiwan protected by the U.S. military, there's not a lot they can do without potentially causing World War III. Every once in a while, though, the Communist Party decides to test us. And now they're taking that to a whole new level, with 25 Chinese fighter planes crashing through Taiwan's airspace just the other day. When Biden was sworn in, many observers thought he'd renounce his predecessor's Cold War strategy, the one that outlined by Pence and then executed by Peter Navarro, who endlessly accused China of stealing anything and everything from jobs, the secrets, the opportunities for American companies to do business on an even footing. That doesn't happen. Not at all. In part because China keeps ratcheting up the tension. Instead, Biden has stepped up calls for China to stop its human rights abuses. That's the last thing the Communist Party wants to hear. A trade war was one thing. They can handle tariffs. That's just money. But they don't want America pushing for stuff like religious freedom or democracy. Turns out our deteriorating relationship with the PRC was always about more than Trump. The Chinese government views the United States as a sunsetting superpower, while they keep getting stronger and stronger. That's why the situation keeps getting worse. Tensions haven't been this bad since right before Nixon went to China a half-century ago. It feels like everything's become a weapon, even orders by Chinese auto companies to buy as many semiconductors from Taiwanese factories as they can, which really did fuel the shortage here in America. The Chinese market is hugely important to so many of our companies, whether we're talking about planes sold by Boeing or sneakers and cell phones sold by Nike and Apple. And now everything feels like it's in the balance. I got to tell you, I'm not feeling great about this, not at all. There's always room to make a deal, but I think it's much more likely the relationship keeps getting worse. Maybe our government can get Europe on board in a coalition of rich democracies, but Europe relies on China to buy 25% of its exports. The Chinese Communist Party is betting that that ship has sailed, and I think they're probably right. If you want to be a cynic about it, the rest of the world doesn't see this as a conflict between dictatorship and democracy. They see two superpowers fighting for dominance, and they don't want to get roped into it. Right now, we're not on a collision course with China. We're past that. I still don't think the Chinese government is crazy enough to make a run at Taiwan, but the fact that they're willing to be this bellicose means that they have no interest in going back to the old status quo. There will be no olive branch, and that has huge implications, not just for the stock market, but for the whole world. I'd like to say there's always a bull market somewhere, and I promise to try to find it just for you, right here on Mad Money. I'm Jim Cramer. See you Monday. The news with Shepard Smith starts now.
Another mass shooting. 8 dead at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis. I'm Shepard Smith. This is the news on CNBC.
FedEx officials have confirmed that Mr. Hull was a former employee at the facility.
Police seize evidence from the suspect's home and search for a motive as America endures its 9th mass murder over the past month. Adam Toledo, Dante Wright, George Floyd, all killed by cops.
Too often in this country, law enforcement uses unnecessary force.
Tonight, examining how officers train for life or death encounters. Close to $2 billion to track COVID variants in America, the dangerous strains driving the surge in new cases. It's the size of New York, Chicago, and San Francisco combined, inside China's high-tech, environmentally friendly city of the future. Plus, family reunion at the border, first guilty plea from the Capitol insurrection, and having a dill of a time at the Pickleball Championship.
Live from CNBC, the facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith.
Yet again in America, more gun violence, 8 dead victims, and this time it took just 1 to 2 minutes. A gunman on a rampage at a FedEx facility in Indianapolis. Investigators have identified the shooter as 19-year-old Brandon Scott Hole, a former FedEx employee who worked at the same warehouse he shot up. We're now learning the FBI questioned the gunman last April, and law enforcement took away one of his guns. Today, federal agents raided his home. We saw them carry out desktop computers, CDs, and this long cardboard box. Investigators say they're still searching for the motive. Police last night say that the shooter opened fire with a rifle at random, first in the parking lot at the FedEx facility, then inside the building where he continued his massacre before shooting and killing himself. In just 1 month, we've now had 9 mass shootings. Shootings at spas in Atlanta, a supermarket in Boulder, a family-run real estate office in Southern California, where a little boy died in his mother's arms. Now, yet again in America, a community shattered. Tonight, yet again, the American flag is at half-staff over the White House. Yet again, President Biden is urging Congress to act to stem the bloodshed.
This has to end. It's a national embarrassment. It is a national embarrassment what's going on. Who in God's name needs a weapon that can hold 100 rounds or 40 rounds or 20 rounds? It's just wrong, and I'm not going to give up till it's done.
President Biden has been pushing lawmakers to ban assault-style rifles and high-capacity magazines, but since the last shooting and the one before that, nothing. Each time we hear kids cry, parents pray, and politicians promise, and then it happens, yet again in America. NBC's Katie Beck is at the FedEx facility in Indy for us tonight. Katie, the FBI confirms they had previous contact with the gunman before this shooting. Give us the details as you have them.
That's right. In March of 2020, the suspect's mother actually contacted local authorities and said she feared her son was going to commit suicide by cop. At that time, he was visited by local authorities, taken into custody on mental health grounds, and a shotgun was seized from his home. Then, a month later, in April of 2020, the FBI followed up in a conversation with the suspect, but found no criminal grounds to charge him, so they let him go. We are told that shotgun was not returned. Now, this morning, when we were hearing from witnesses who were inside this facility when they say they saw the hooded gunman come in the door and start spraying bullets, there were terrifying accounts from people who said this guy looked like he knew his way around. Police confirming today that that 19-year-old was a former employee, did know his way around. Here's what one employee had to say about what he witnessed this morning.
My friend at the time witnessed a man who was not a part of the incidents, but he also pulled out a gun from his trunk to try and engage the shooter, and he died because of it.
So these were the type of difficult descriptions that we were hearing throughout the day, Shep, from people who were inside that facility, witnessing what was going on and what would have been an ordinary overnight shift inside this plant.
Katie Beck, live on scene. Thank you. Protests are underway in Chicago. They're demanding justice for 13-year-old Adam Toledo after police yesterday released video of an officer shooting and killing him. Adam was a 7th grader. His last seconds documented by body cam footage that sparked outrage and grief in the city and beyond. Surveillance video appeared to show Adam had thrown away the gun that he was holding right before he turned to face the officer. His hands appeared empty at the time he was shot. Some analysts are calling for the officer who killed him to be fired. This is Eric Stillman. He's been placed on administrative leave, duties for the next 30 days. He's 34 years old. He's been on the force for 5 years. The shooting in Chicago only adding to the debate over the use of force by police. The attorney for Stillman said his client was left with no other option but to shoot Adam, arguing that Officer Stillman had no place to take cover. In Brooklyn Center, where Dante Wright was shot and killed, the officer there says she grabbed her gun by accident instead of her taser. And the topic is already on trial in Minneapolis, while the death of George Floyd is replayed in court. 3 examples, all different circumstances, but raising similar questions. Isaiah McKinnon now, former chief of police in Detroit. Isaiah, thank you. Let's start with Chicago. The officer's split-second decision there led to the death of Adam Toledo. Is that what the training says officers should do in that type of situation?
Shepard, that's the worst-case scenario for any law enforcement officer. It's 2:30 in the morning. You're chasing a person down a street or an alley. You see a gun, and you tell that person to drop the gun or stop or something to that effect. And he didn't see the man or the person throw the gun away. At some point, the person turns around. The officer has a split second, I'm talking about a split second, to make that decision. And, this will be second guessed forever and forever. But, I lost 4 officers during my time as chief of police in Detroit. One officer was almost exactly like this situation in which a person shot him. He had a vest, and the bullet skipped off the vest and tore his heart apart and killed him. These are the kinds of situations, Shepard, that we can't literally give the first shot to the person.
Understood. Then there's Brooklyn Center, taser versus gun. It's a big debate now. Officers are trained to know the difference, right?
They're trained to know the difference in those kinds of situations. However, in the heat of the moment, I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt here. But as we look at whether it's the gun or the taser, do we need to go with the taser or the gun? In this situation, you can see the taser as the officer has that gun or taser pointed at the victim. To me, it looks as if you can see, and it's a yellow thing in front of you. It looks as if you can see this. And so there were 3 officers that were present at the scene. So there was no need, in my opinion, to go to this kind of circumstance.
And what about de-escalating? There's training on that, too. Isn't that a potential solution to really all of these problems? I mean, you didn't have to chase the kid. He did have a gun. I'm not a cop. I've never faced this. Who am I to judge? But we all have to think about this because people keep dying.
We absolutely do. And de-escalation is the potential answer. I remember once I had almost a similar circumstance where I stopped a person, a young kid who had a weapon, and I pulled my gun on him. He had the gun out. It turned out it was a toy gun. It could have been awful for this young man and certainly for myself. But you have that split second. You want to de-escalate as much as possible. But I think I get to this, Shepard. We want to look at the kind of people that we're bringing into this group of law enforcement. We want to make sure that they make the right decisions. And that's so important in terms of who we bring in, what kind of training, and if it's a daily, yearly, monthly, yearly training for officers who have to go out and face these kinds of situations.
Isaiah, I can't thank you enough. All the best. We want to turn to COVID now because the situation in Brazil is now being called a humanitarian catastrophe. Tonight, the rising death toll among children and babies, and the warning to women there not even to get pregnant. England preparing tomorrow for the funeral of Prince Philip. Ahead, the guest list, the COVID precautions, the special hearse he helped design that will carry his coffin. And finding a way back from extremism. Later in this news hour, the helpline jammed with callers desperate to rescue people they love who've embraced the ideologies of hate.
The facts, the truth, the news with Shepard Smith. Back in 60 seconds.
Nobody dreams in conventional thinking. It didn't get us to the moon. It doesn't ring the bell on Wall Street or disrupt the status quo. T-Mobile for Business uses unconventional thinking to help you realize new possibilities, like our new Work From Anywhere solutions, so your teams can collaborate almost anywhere. Plus customer experience that finds solutions in the moment, and first-class benefits like 5G with every plan. Network, support, and value without any trade-offs. That's T-Mobile for Business.
We started with computers. We didn't stop at computers. We didn't stop at storage or cloud. We kept going, working with our customers to enable a kind of technology that can guide an astronaut back to safety and help make a hospital come to you instead of you going to it. So when it comes to your business, you know we'll stop at nothing.
Starting Monday, every American age 16 and older will be eligible for a COVID vaccine. The experts say vaccinating younger people is a key step toward ending the pandemic. But right now, COVID is spreading across America, and people are still getting very sick, and some are dying. At least 37 states reported a rise in average daily cases over the past week. 37, according to Johns Hopkins. Health officials say highly contagious variants are contributing to this upward trend. Today, the White House announced plans to invest $1.7 billion to help states track and monitor the new variants. Meanwhile, the CDC reports a panel of advisors will meet next Friday to discuss the nationwide pause on administering the J&J vaccine. Health experts are concerned that shelving the shot could increase vaccine hesitancy, especially among marginalized communities. In North Carolina, one organization is now sending teams of specialists to encourage people to get shots and ensure they're being distributed equally. NBC's Mara Barrett is in Wake County.
These strike teams are made up of community-embedded teams that bring together vaccination opportunities like this one at the Premier Iglesias Church, specifically targeted to the Latino community here in Wake County. The reason they picked this spot is because the team is using data vulnerability mapping, and that makes sure that they can look at historically marginalized communities, the rates of poverty, the rates of low access to transportation and housing, and then they also overlay that with the COVID positivity rates we've seen over the last year where there were issues in testing, and making sure they target the vaccination sites are made available. Now, these community-embedded teams also are making calls to local leaders and members to make sure they can combat any vaccine hesitancy, because they have seen some now, especially with the J&J pause, people canceling some of their appointments, and so these people can make those one-on-one calls to help ease any of that hesitation. They have seen some successes.
We've seen some people move from an absolute no, there's no way I'm going to get vaccinated, to, well, I'll consider it. And then we've seen some people move from I'll consider it to I'm getting vaccinated to I'm now vaccinated. And so that's what we are working on, at least trying to move the needle a little bit.
Shep, this eligibility expansion we're seeing on Monday comes earlier than President Biden originally planned. The program director here is saying speeding things up can be a good thing, but it often justifies injustice, and that's exactly what they're working to combat here in North Carolina. Shep.
Mara Barrett, thank you. COVID deaths in Brazil are now peaking, but the virus isn't killing just adults there. The government estimates about 1,300 young children, including babies, have died since the pandemic began. But experts say the real number is likely much higher. Today, the Brazilian health minister urged women do not get pregnant until Brazil gets COVID under control. He says the recommendation is in part due to the dominant variant there, which appears to affect expectant mothers more than other strains. Healthcare systems across Brazil are buckling as patients overwhelm ICUs. Drugs needed for intubating people are running dangerously low, and in some hospitals, they've run out. One doctor in Rio telling the Associated Press that nurses started tying patients to their beds because they don't have any more sedatives. International health officials described the situation in Brazil as a humanitarian catastrophe. Earlier today, we spoke with a top doctor there.
We are in our worst moment of the pandemic. We are living the peak of the second wave, and in some areas we are just expecting the third wave of the epidemic in Brazil. And now we are living under what I would say an unthinkable situation in terms of the overwhelmed hospital system with all ICUs completely full of COVID-19 patients. We'll have the saddest April and maybe the saddest May of our lives, because we are having almost 4,000 deaths a day in the country. In some areas, we even have shortage of coffins to bury people died by COVID-19.
It's incredible. Johns Hopkins reports Brazil has the second most COVID deaths in all the world, not far behind the United States, but with 2/3 the population. Tomorrow, the Queen will say her final goodbye to her husband, Prince Philip, before he's laid to rest. Today, Buckingham Palace releasing details of the royal funeral. There will be no eulogies and no sermons, but a small choir will sing songs chosen by the late Prince Philip. And only 30 people set to attend the service due to COVID restrictions. On the guest list, Prince Harry. A palace spokesperson says he's quarantining at home near Windsor Castle. It's the Duke of Sussex's first time in the United Kingdom that we know about since he stepped back from royal duties and moved across the Atlantic. His wife, Meghan Markle, will not attend the service. The palace says a physician has advised her not to travel because she's pregnant with the couple's second child. And the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will not be at the funeral either. Instead, he'll reportedly watch the service, like all the rest of us on TV. On what we should expect from the royal funeral, here's NBC's Keir Simmons.
Prince Philip will be laid to rest in St. George's Chapel, a day of family goodbyes, military honours and history. The funeral will begin at 11 a.m., 6 a.m. Eastern, when the coffin will be brought from the private chapel at Windsor Castle to the state entrance. At 2:40 here, 9:40 Eastern, it will be placed in a modified Land Rover that Prince Philip himself created. He had a passion for design. At 2:45, 9:45 Eastern, the hearse will proceed through a route lined by military personnel to arrive 8 minutes later at the west steps of St. George's Chapel, where the Royal Marines will lift the coffin and carry it inside. The funeral will take place at 3 p.m., 10 a.m. Eastern, following a national minute of silence. Buckingham Palace has revealed the 30-person guest list and the formation of those walking behind the hearse. His children, Princess Anne and Prince Charles, will be followed by Prince Edward and Prince Andrew. Coming after will be his grandchildren, Prince William and Prince Harry, though they will be separated by their cousin, Peter Phillips. The two famously walked with their grandfather at Princess Diana's funeral. The Queen will travel in a Bentley behind the procession, and in perhaps the most poignant moment of a day filled with meaning, during the ceremony, she will sit alone. The service here at Windsor Castle will last less than an hour. The end of an era. Shep.
Keir Simmons, thank you. Now, an update from the Louisiana coast as bad weather delays search and rescue attempts of that capsized boat. And thousands of children arriving at the U.S. border. Tonight, the story of one boy who became lost in the desert trying to cross into Arizona, bouncing from government custody to foster care, all while his mother kept up a desperate search in a system she says offered no help.
There is a tenacity that I have. Nothing's gonna stop me.
Ooh. Did you see that?
Wow.
That's cool.
We got a deal!
Welcome to Shark Tank.
Shark Tank, Sunday starting at 3 Eastern. CNBC, get yours.
On Tech Check, Sonos CEO Patrick Spence on the rise of social audio, plus a preview of the week's big tech earnings. Netflix, IBM, and Intel. Tech Check, 11 Eastern. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
With Visible, you get unlimited data for as little as $25 a month. But when you bring a friend, you get a month for $5. So I'm bringing everyone within 12 degrees of me. Damn. 12 months of $5 wireless. Visible, wireless that gets better with friends.
Hey Google, turn up the heat.
With Visible, you get unlimited data for as little as $25 a month. But when you bring a friend, you get a month for $5. So I'm bringing everyone within 12 degrees of me. Damn. 12 months of $5 wireless. Visible, wireless that gets better with friends.
We're not saying Daily Harvest will change your life, but we're pretty sure it can make some things easier, like one-handed breakfast. And we can't promise Daily Harvest will mean eating well 100% of the time, or that it will be the first of many steps to a healthier way of life, or that it will give you more energy to chase your goals, or whatever you want to chase. But we're not saying that. We can say that Daily Harvest takes care of food so that food can take care of you. So it's a pretty good place to start. Get started today at dailyharvest.com.
The future of fitness isn't dumbbells. It's revolutionary digital weight that learns as you get stronger. So you can be your strongest. Tonal, now at 40 Nordstrom locations nationwide.
A second body now recovered from that capsized ship off the coast of Louisiana. Coast Guard officials say they found the remains about 30 miles from the boat. Another victim found on Wednesday. Rescuers still searching for 11 people listed officially as missing. The authorities say they think it's possible that survivors might have found air pockets inside the ship. So divers knocked on the hull today, hoping for contact, but no response. The NTSB declaring a major marine casualty and now set to investigate. It's been 3 days since the Coast Guard received that distress call about 8 miles south of Port Fourchon. So far, they've recovered 6 people, no victims identified, and the cause still unknown. The U.S. government reports it has almost 22,000 migrant children in its custody right now, and that number is expected to rise to about 35,000 next month. We've been reporting on the surge of migrant children crossing the southern border without their parents, but what happens after they get here? Well, about 80% of them already have a family member living in the United States. That's according to Homeland Security. And about 40% of those family members are their legal parents or guardians. Those family members then have to call a hotline and piece together information on where their children are. Reuniting, often a painful process, they tell us, one that sometimes takes weeks, even up to a month. The resources are limited, the parents are desperate, like one mom who decided to take matters into her own hands. Here's NBC's Dasha Burns.
You could say it's a story about immigration, about the overwhelming number of unaccompanied minors in government custody, about policy and politics. It's also a story about a teddy bear named Peludin. He traveled from Santa Ana, California to Phoenix, Arizona in the arms of a mother, desperate to reunite him with her 6-year-old boy named Juan Felipe, holding the toy all through the journey as tightly as she wanted to hold her son.
Peludín. Your son? Sí, te compré este porque como se perdió el del para que since he lost his, this was here so that he knows that he has a buddy because he lost one on the way.
Juan Felipe lost his first Peludin in the desert when crossing the border from Mexico to Arizona. His mom, Andrea, says she came to the U.S. from Venezuela last year because of threats on her life. When her family started receiving the same threats, they too came here seeking asylum. Juan Felipe traveled with his stepfather, half-brother, and his abuela. But they were separated by Customs and Border Protection despite the fact that he was with his stepfather, and Juan Felipe was deemed an unaccompanied minor. CBP did not respond to requests for comment on the separation. Andrea spent a week trying to get information about her son.
Nadie me decía, no decían ni si estaban o no estaban. No me decían nada, no le puedo dar información, no le puedo dar información. Llamaba 3 veces al día, en la mañana, en la tarde y en la noche.
But Andrea eventually did get a call from CBP telling her Juan Felipe wouldn't stop crying. Then another call from Health and Human Services telling her he wasn't eating or sleeping.
What was it like to get those phone calls, hear your son crying on the other end of the line? What was that experience like for you?
Ay, eso me destrozó el alma, me destrozó porque era muy lindo porque él cuando lo iban a trasladar no se dejaba montar a la van, al bus. Y decía, sin mi abuelita no, sin mi abuelita no.
She learned he was placed in a temporary foster home in Phoenix, so she sought help from Dr. Amy Cohen, who runs Every Last One, a nonprofit that helps reunite families. The two quickly got on a plane to Arizona to advocate for Juan Felipe's release.
We are inundated with calls from families with even very young children who they've not heard from for weeks and weeks, who they're unable to locate because even the systems for locating a children have broken down.
But this week, Andrea became one of the lucky ones. And so did Peludin, finally finding his lost boy.
How are you feeling? ¿Cómo te sientes? Feliz, feliz. Me dijo que no se quería separar de mí nunca más.
There are still thousands of parents still fighting through a system that is frankly overwhelmed. We also connected with a Guatemalan father of 2 young girls as he dialed a government hotline meant for parents of migrant children. He's been calling that hotline every single day for 3 weeks, and we listened as he was put on hold for an hour and a half, only to be told that this is a process that requires, quote, patience and serenity, and that they could not disclose his girl's location. Shep?
Dasha Burns, thank you. Okay, imagine a high-tech city built from the ground up with the next generation infrastructure. It's happening, but it's very far from here. Tonight, building China's massive eco-friendly model city. And 100 days ago today, we were reporting on the storming of the U.S. Capitol. Tonight, memories from some of the people who were hiding in the halls or fighting back the angry mob.
Doug. Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Thank you.
Hey, no, Liam. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. Strip away what you don't want, like added sugars and preservatives. And what's left is the good stuff, the real fruit and vegetable juices of Naked. Stripped down to naked.
Maybe it's only a feeling. Only a dream, only a day trip that lasts long after sundown. Maybe it's only a weekend or a moment, but sometimes those only things are the only things that matter. The Jeep Grand Cherokee, there's only one.
Now get 0% financing for 72 months on select 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee models. Plus, get no additional charge maintenance with the Jeep Wave Customer Care Program.
You can't stop smiling. And why even try? You just turned a dream into something official. You're proud, you're relieved, you're kind of parched. Because you stopped saying maybe and started yelling yes. You damned the torpedoes, forded the Rubicon, and now it's time to conquer Rome, or retail, or whatever. Start your business and keep it running with LegalZoom. Let's make it official.
America's biggest automaker bringing new jobs to Tennessee. And that's what's topping CNBC's On the Money. General Motors partnering with LG to open a second battery plant, this time in Spring Hill, about 30 miles south of Nashville. The new factory to support production of GM's upcoming Cadillac Lyriq. It's a crossover and other vehicles as well. It's scheduled to open in 2 years and bring 1,300 manufacturing jobs to the area. Home builders racing to meet demand. The Commerce Department reports the pace of new home construction surged to a 15-year high in March, up more than 19% from the previous month. The increase follows a sharp decline in February when winter storms across the country slammed the brakes on much-needed construction. And three-time NBA champion Dwayne Wade is now part owner of the Utah Jazz. We don't know what percentage of the team he owns, but the NBA has a rule against ownership stakes of less than 1%. Dwayne Wade says he plans to take an active role in the team. On Wall Street, the Dow up 165, the S&P up 15, the NASDAQ up 14. I'm Shepard Smith on CNBC. It's the bottom of the hour. Time for the top of the news. Laugh at the name, but not the numbers. With more than 4 million players, it's one of the fastest growing sports in America, and the pickleball money is pouring in. Will he or won't he? The president going back and forth over raising the cap on refugees allowed to enter the country. And today we received new information from the White House. And 100 days after the attack on the Capitol, a milestone in the federal investigation. Prosecutors scoring their first guilty plea and cooperation from one of the suspects. John Schaefer is a founding member of the Oath Keepers. He pleaded guilty today to 2 felonies. First, obstructing an official proceeding, and second, entering a restricted building with a weapon, bear spray. He told prosecutors he was there because he believed Joe Biden's victory was fraudulent. He said to be cooperating with the prosecutors. And for the people inside that building, the trauma has not yet left. Lieutenant Ronnie Brooks was defending the Capitol that day. She says the moments come back in flashes, fighting against the protesters, 60 to 70 officers trying to keep them from getting through the door. She was tackled, her helmet stolen. Dion Montague, working in the Capitol cafeteria, forced to hide when rioters breached. I was scared then, he says. I heard police officers running back and forth, grabbing people and IDing them, some people who didn't belong there. He says now he stays vigilant, keeps an eye out all the time. And the Utah Senator Mitt Romney, moments away from the mob that day, Officer Eugene Goodman saved him. He says he's frustrated with people who had gone along with the big lie, telling Americans that the election was stolen. He now says he hopes to leave some of the broken glass and damaged parts of the Capitol right where the rioters left them. He says, as a reminder, that when we succumb to the untruths as a nation, it can lead to violence and even death. Our thanks to NBC's Frank Thorpe for those stirring photos. The extremism that inspired the attack on January 6th is on the rise. There's new domestic terrorism incidents hitting a high not seen in decades, according to new analysis from the Washington Post and the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Since 2015, right-wing extremists have been involved in 267 plots or attacks and 91 deaths, driven mostly by white supremacist, anti-Muslim, and anti-government groups. Experts say social media has accelerated the problem, acting as a sort of safe haven for extremists to easily share their theories and grievances. So once you're in a hate group, how do you get out? NBC's Hallie Jackson on one organization trying to rescue the extremists.
Do you know if he's ever condoned violence?
At Parents for Peace, the phones keep ringing.
When COVID happened, our helpline tripled.
Executive Director Miriam Churchill says it's not just because of the pandemic.
Did the events of January 6th have any impact on your helpline that you could see?
Yes, the helpline number was just hot.
On the line, people who want to get their loved ones out of all kinds of hate groups, ideologies from white supremacy to Islamic radicalism.
People that are using hate, they are self-medicating themselves with hate. I think it's an addiction.
It's why they do interventions, these days on Zoom. And we were granted rare access to listen in as their caller joined on speakerphone.
We agree, your husband needs help.
I appreciate the support.
We're obscuring her identifying details, but can say she wants help for her husband, who drinks, goes online, and sinks deeper into hate.
He would say that, if half the population were wiped out, things would be better.
Was there a point when you saw that your husband was getting increasingly radicalized?
Yeah, I would say it was after the Capitol riots.
She searched and found the Parents for Peace website, which features a photo of a former white supremacist.
I thought, wow, if only I could just get him in the same room with my husband, this is what might be able to reach him better.
That person is Chris Buckley. He says he joined the KKK in 2013 after he left the Army following a bad Humvee crash and got addicted to painkillers, then crystal meth.
You were actually training other members of the Klan to fight.
Yep.
A 2015 documentary shows Buckley with his then preschool-age son.
White power! I was grooming him. He threw a fit until we made him a robe that matched mine.
In 2016, his wife reached out for help, and within weeks, another former white supremacist showed up at Buckley's door for an intervention.
It was the most agonizing, exhausting, emotional roller coaster that I've ever been on.
Buckley is now helping others out of hate.
For every one that I recruited while I was in, I can take 10 more back.
New research from RAND shows stigmatizing extremists or punishing them can be counterproductive. So Parents for Peace looks for other ways to help people who love people who hate.
We are guiding families to be first responders.
Like that helpline caller who's separating from her husband.
This is a shock to the system, but it's starting to have the effect that I hoped for him, is that he's reaching out for help now. That's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing with love, because what else can combat hate better than love?
For her, now it's hope over hate. Hallie Jackson, NBC News, Washington.
Well, in Washington today, President Biden delayed a promise he made to the country and to the world. The White House announced it will not yet increase the cap on refugees allowed into our country, despite the fact that the now president said he would do so swiftly during the campaign and while in office.
I'm approving an executive order to begin the hard work of restoring our refugee admissions program to help meet the unprecedented global need. It's going to take time to rebuild what has been so badly damaged, but that's precisely what we're going to do.
But not yet. The cap was supposed to go up to 62,500 this year. Instead, for now, it's remaining at 15,000, the same historically low level set by the former president. President Biden, as of this week, is on pace to admit the lowest number of refugees of any president in American history. That's according to the International Rescue Committee. And it doesn't appear there are any exceptions for Afghan refugees who are about to be without U.S. military support effective September the 11th. President Biden is lifting restrictions on who can qualify for refugee status. Under the latest proposal, refugees in Africa will get most of the slots, 7,000. There are 3,000 slots for those from Latin America and the Caribbean, and the rest, as you can see here, spread out all across the globe. CNBC senior White House correspondent Kayla Tausche. Now, Kayla, the president got a lot of backlash in the midday, and then by afternoon, a change appeared.
That's right, Shep. The White House now says that President Biden has until mid-May to raise the refugee cap and may still do that. And that would apply to the fiscal year, which ends in September. But even so, a statement from the White House press secretary Jen Psaki said that because the program was, in her words, decimated, that it seems unlikely that it could even process north of 62,000 refugees. Psaki said the president would keep his pledge to raise the refugee cap by nearly tenfold beginning in October. But unlike most policy decisions, senior officials did not organize a briefing to explain the rationale for keeping the Trump-era limit in place. The administration has been facing problematic politics as the pandemic plateaus and illegal apprehensions surge at the southern border. So then the walk back late this afternoon, right before a delayed press conference with Japan's prime minister, eventually began, and it all followed backlash from key congressional allies on the left. Pramila Jayapal, who chairs the House Progressive Caucus, saying, "I appreciate that President Biden eliminated geographic allocations, but this is not sufficient. Each day that passes without signing the emergency presidential determination is another day of signing off on Trump's cruel policies. The party's firebrand, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, called the decision completely and utterly unacceptable, saying Biden promised to welcome immigrants and people voted for him based on that promise. Shep?
Kayla, thank you. There's been a Castro in charge in Cuba for 62 years. That's about to end. Raul Castro is stepping down as the head of the Communist Party there. His replacement expected to be Cuba's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel. The Communist Party today began a 4-day Congress to initiate the transfer of power. Diaz-Canel represents a new generation born after the Castro-led revolution back in 1959. Raul Castro turns 90 in 2 months. His retirement comes as Cuba faces multiple challenges, including a lack of cash to import food and medicine. Castro took over for his brother Fidel in 2006 when he became ill. As President Biden attempts to push a close to $2 trillion infrastructure plan, China is pouring money into an ambitious project, turning a quiet chunk of their land into what Xi Jinping calls a perfect city. It's being built right now in northern China with technology and environment in mind. The technology and infrastructure is extraordinary. In Zhongyan, here's CNBC's Eunice Yoon.
A 62-mile drive south of Beijing, China is building an entire city from scratch, investing, as the sign says, for the next millennium.
President Xi Jinping chose this location in 2017, arguing that turning a sleepy backwaters into a model smart city would be a strategy for 1,000 years for China.
The model city, called Shong'an, comes with a high-speed railway station as big as 66 soccer fields. Covered by a solar-paneled roof to cut carbon emissions, the station is already up and running, taking in trains traveling at 220 miles an hour that cut the trip from the Chinese capital by more than half to 50 minutes. Shong'an's area is set to equal New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco combined for an estimated 10 million people by 2050. Technologies are being tested, in some cases forced, like in the most developed part of town.
The government wants to show that China's city of the future is high-tech and environmentally friendly. You can't drive in with a regular car. All transport is electric.
So companies like Alibaba's logistic arm and Baidu tinker with self-driving EVs to help workers and residents.
This is an unmanned mobile vending machine. Got my water.
Here you can pay for a meal with China's brand new state-controlled digital currency, then rest on a dual-use park bench.
This has a solar panel, and I could charge my phone.
The city is offering tax breaks and perks to attract China's big tech, as well as more familiar names, to ensure Beijing realizes its goal by 2035 for Shong'an to set global standards, as the slogans here read, with Chinese characteristics. For the news, I'm Eunice Yoon in Shong'an.
Well, in America, the reopenings continue across the country, including theme parks. Universal Studios Hollywood dusting itself off after a long hiatus. We're live there, precautions and all. And a man looking for redemption and a boy looking for a home. Tonight, the love they both needed to make their family permanent.
With Visible, you get unlimited data for as little as $25 a month. But when you bring a friend, you get a month for $5. So I'm bringing everyone within 12 degrees of me. Damn. 12 months of $5 wireless. Visible, wireless that gets better with friends.
Are you managing your diabetes using finger sticks? With the new Freestyle Libre 2 system, a continuous glucose monitor, you can check your glucose with a painless 1-second scan. And now, with optional alarms, you can choose to be notified if you go too high or too low. And for those who qualify, the Freestyle Libre 2 system is now covered by Medicare. Ask your doctor for a prescription. You can do it without finger sticks. Learn more at freestylelibre2.us.
Dad, isn't that where we usually stop for gas?
It's where we used to stop, but not anymore.
But isn't that the place with the milkshakes?
Okay, all right, let's go.
Take your adventure further in the first ever Santa Fe Hybrid.
The
future of fitness isn't dumbbells. It's revolutionary digital weight that learns as you get stronger. So you can be your strongest. Tonal, now at 40 Nordstrom locations nationwide.
If you're tired and you know it, skip the gym.
If you're anxious and you know it, take a break.
If your heart rate variability is 50 and your body temperature's normal.
If your breathing rate is optimal and you know it,
bring it on.
Aura. Know why you feel how you feel.
Reopening America, and there's nothing more American than a theme park. After more than a year, Universal Studios Hollywood is opening for business. That park, owned by the parent company of this network. There are COVID restrictions, of course. Parks allowed to operate at 25% capacity, and only for residents of California. Guests will have their temperatures checked, masks required, food available using mobile payments only, but COVID will not dampen all the fun. Park officials say most rides will be open, including new attractions. From Universal City, here's CNBC's Julia Borston.
Universal Hollywood's reopening is a sign Southern California, which has been hit hard by the pandemic, is coming back online.
2, 1, let's get it, guys.
And consumers are getting in line. Tickets sold out for the pre-opening yesterday for season pass holders, and they're sold out through Sunday. Universal says guests have been enthusiastic and demand is strong.
People in Southern California love theme parks. They always have. It's kind of the spiritual home of the industry. It's part of the culture here, and they haven't been able to visit for a year, so they're trying to catch up for that lost time now.
In addition to implementing distancing measures, the company invested in its attractions. It finished a new Secret Life of Pets ride, and it revamped Jurassic World, the ride. And in the past year, both Universal and Disney investing in technology at their parks.
The industry was already moving towards mobile ordering, mobile ticketing, a lot of app-based development, and that's just had to accelerate. So I think a lot of forward-looking consumers have been anticipating all of this. They've been really, wanting to use these services.
Universal's and all the parks' revenue is a valuable piece of the California economy, with 49 amusement and water parks employing 135,000 employees, generating $1.5 billion in annual tax revenue and $14 billion in state commerce. And that revenue is expected to eventually come back. The biggest of the parks, Disneyland and California Adventure, open April 30th, with hour-plus long waits to book reservations online. For Disney, as well as Universal's parent Comcast, these parks have generated meaningful profits in the past, but also important, they keep the company's brands, such as Jurassic Park or Avengers, top of mind for the media giants between their film releases. Chef?
And there's so much fun. Julia, thank you. Home, it's where the heart is. It's a place, a person, a feeling, home. And for one 8-year-old boy in Wisconsin, after 1,500 days in foster care, it's a long-dreamed reality. Local reporting now from NBC station WEAU and their reporter, Jessica Mendoza.
8-year-old Damon Smith officially became Damon Philip Langhoff today as he struck down an imaginary gavel, finalizing his adoption in a virtual court of law.
It's kind of nice that I don't have to be like, well, I'm moving tomorrow again and again. I just know that I'm like, I'm here. I'm just here. I'm here.
After more than 4 years in the foster care system, Damon can now officially call Jimmy Lee Langhoff Dad.
It's very emotional. It has been 2.5 years in the making.
But the story of Jimmy and Damon is even more inspiring than you may think. It's an unlikely story of breaking down barriers and overcoming the odds.
I am not what somebody would call an ideal candidate to adopt a child. I am a 51-year-old gay convicted felon, and I am a recovering drug addict and an alcoholic.
After receiving his 5th DUI 12 years ago, Langhoff knew he needed to turn his life around.
I accepted the gift of recovery, and it's something that I do every single day of my life.
Years of growth and dedication later, Langhoff's sponsor suggested becoming a foster parent.
I thought he had lost his mind.
Still, he decided to look into it.
And I was like, well, I'm really only interested in adoption. And I prayed about it.
Then he got a call from Eau Claire Human Services.
She said, Jimmy, you're not going to believe this. We have a 5-year-old boy who lives 6 blocks from you, and he needs to be adopted. And I knew.
Most people don't go through this, but I did, and it is a very long journey, but I figured out how to get out.
A long journey, no doubt, but once things became real Wednesday morning, there was just one thing left to do.
You ready to celebrate?
Yes.
For the news, I'm Jessica Mendoza.
I love it. 48 years. That's how long it's been since the U.S. had an astronaut on the moon. Elon Musk and NASA teaming up to change all that. Their new moonshot plan is next. And pickleball takes off. Laugh all you want. The sport saw a jarring rise during the pandemic as new players relish the game. And one of them, our very own Jane Wells. Jane, I hear pickleball is a really big deal.
Shep, it's the fastest growing sport in America, and all kinds of clubs and condo communities and cities are investing in new courts. We're going to meet the top player in the country when we come back. And here's a tip. You always serve underhanded below the waist.
Oh,
that
Jane.
when we come back. Ooh,
Jane and her rainbow.
Ah!
We've been at this for a year. Juggling, struggling, winning, and losing. But the light is ahead, and it invites us not to go back to where we left off, but to break through, to redefine how we relate, to reinvent the way we work, and reimagine how we communicate. This is our moment to build something new.
Alexa, play Ooh La La.
The Moxie Shower Head Speaker. Only from Kohler.
Say the annual interest rate on your savings account was 1% and inflation was 2%. After 1 year, you'd be able to buy less with that money than you can today. For more, go to cnbc.com/investinYou.
The future of fitness isn't dumbbells. It's revolutionary digital weight that learns as you get stronger. So you can be your strongest. Tonal, now at 40 Nordstrom locations nationwide.
Schools are one of the most impacted industries from COVID-19, and students have suffered massive learning loss. With education technology growing to a $6.1 billion industry by 2025, there is no better time to build the future with Abi, an AI-enabled tutor that was named one of Time's best inventions in 2020.
Amazing.
Abi is highly adaptive and personalized, giving teachers and students around the world the tools they need to succeed. Be a part of our mission at joinabi.com.
Everyone, this is Jake.
One of you guys worked here.
You'll be needing this English-Spanish dictionary.
More Undercover Bosses next. CNBC. Get yours.
The GOATs, Muhammad Ali, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Ben Johns. Don't know that last one. 22-year-old college student, the greatest of all time, if you follow pickleball. The paddle sport, once popular with retirees in sunny places, now attracting all kinds of players and getting increasingly legit. Sponsors and sports networks taking notice. In fact, tomorrow, the U.S. Pickleball Championships begin in Naples, Florida. So we asked our own champ, Jane Wells, to suit up and investigate the pickleball boom.
You're watching the top player in the fastest growing sport in America. This is pickleball. it's a big deal.
It's addictive. You start going and it's just like one more game, one more game.
Pickleball is not new, but it is on fire. It's a sport with a special court, net, and rules, a mashup of tennis, badminton, and ping pong. University of Maryland senior Ben Johns ranks #1. He discovered the sport in high school while playing tennis with his brother Colin, who was on the Tennis Pro Tour.
And there were pickleball courts that had been built nearby the tennis courts I practiced at, and I just saw it play, and I was like, oh, that sport seems fun. I'll give it a try. Easy game, Jane, easy game.
The game is popular because it can be easy or hard. The number of pickleballers in the U.S. grew over 2%. And these people have money. California is nicknamed Surf City. Pickleball courts, hoping to become a mecca.
There are 24 people playing 1 day a week. We've seen 2,500 people come through the course.
Things are on sauna is the sport. If we can get some of the national.
With
bigger and the crowds got more sick. I feel like I playing what I considered and now I get asked to sign stuff left in pictures.
How much money did you make in 2018?
More than probably 3,000. Maybe.
Just having fun. Now, there's talk of getting football in the Olympics, but Johnson country half field team. He doesn't have coach. Is he opposed to actually create a strategy? One thing shows communities are converting to pickleball. It's a picture side. A little noisy. Back to you.
What pickleball? What? I don't see picks.
Okay, there's now he enters dogs, picks, probably not true. Sit there, one of his wives could be a rower, and she's matching all these sports remind of the pickle boat rowing, where all the leftover.
Okay, I'm gonna watch someday. Those is required.
For me, I'm most opposite the fact that I no can die at all, but still.
And you look great doing it. Jane Wells, thank you so much. Beats is a race to the moon. NASA today's space. You Starship land first not to the moon for 11. That 2 other positions come to the free Bill Dark NASA mission. You get extra back to the moon 124. But first, space will have successfully landed one thing on Starship prototype. But land last month. 17 wrap back in 1972. Knew this out. Indians say this. They're who can't bet as idiots will know. Yeah, they shoot you go. And law enforcement took away one of his guns after his other one never might have come. argument that for money in the murder trial should and the jury to liberate his after death George Floyd. It started Monday. Every American